Good evening and welcome to the November 2nd, 2023 joint school board and budget meeting to review the school budget. I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome everyone. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Totten and Dr. Jetty, who are going to select our order for the night. I think you guys put it on our agenda last week, but last night.
Yes. Excellent. Well, thank you. So here we begin our budget review process. So just want to acknowledge that we have our administrative team joining us up front tonight. Principal Hess is joining us remotely on the computer at the end. And we have some other directors who are here. Honestly, we had a little kerfuffle. We thought 6:30 was the start, so we're going to have some people popping in as they arrive for the 6:30 meeting that is now underway. So bear with us on that. And then I also just want to acknowledge that we do have budget committee members sitting in the back. So, you know, this is like the budget theater in the round with the budget committee observing our process. And I believe this evening there'll be an opportunity for questions from the budget committee. And earlier today, a spreadsheet was shared that will become the way that we track questions and assign questions out to be answered. So the link to that has been shared with Chairman Sun, but also with all the board members and the administrative team. So that'll be a way that we can keep track of questions that need to be answered. So let me just start with a couple of overview. And I know this is basically what I do each year, but I just think when you go into the budget season, you got to ground yourself and you have to sort of remember what we're doing and why we're going about doing it. So a couple of key things about our budget. I mean, that is our financial plan that we're going to operate for the next year. It's basically what allows our team to improve on performance. So linked here, we have the school board goals that were established for this team to work with. The goals are labeled 2021 through 2024 goals. So this is our third year of those goals. They'll need to be reset this summer coming up. But basically, this is what's been driving our team around the 5 key areas, which is the love of learning, great teachers and great staff, post-secondary pathways, facility improvements, and community engagement. And so that's what we have been focusing on and what the board has asked us to pay attention to, and our budget should reflect those major goals in terms of what it is that we're trying to accomplish. Another thing is that we take those each year and we break them down into school-specific and district-specific objectives. So the school district objectives are listed there. You can see that we are tracking the action steps that we took, the end of the year progress that we had made, and also the action steps for the year that we currently are in. Our main goals at the district level are LMS building upgrades, the new elementary school, and the culture and climate action research that has been engaged with at the school level, but it's a district goal. At Campbell, they are focused on PLCs, making sure that our teachers are able to collaborate together, redefining their advisory to make sure that that is meeting student needs and supporting students, and also increasing awareness and the usage of multiple data types, so that if we're going to become a school more focused on data and driven by it, or informed by it, they can understand it. And finally, fostering a positive staff climate and culture, which is also tied back to culture and climate work that the district has engaged with. At LMS, they are focused on social emotional learning and making sure that students have the tools in order to be successful in the classroom. They are also looking at personalization to make sure that students have opportunities to personalize the learning that they are being asked to engage with. And also they're focused on the community and just increasing overall awareness of strengths and needs at LMS within the broader community of Litchfield. And finally, at Griffin, they also are focused on their professional learning communities or PLCs, making sure that the teachers are collaborating and working together. Social emotional learning is another big one. You're going to see that woven into the budget throughout, how we're paying attention to and staffing appropriately for social emotional success. And then our work study practices. How do we make sure that the work study practices at the elementary level are aligned with the progression of learning and the work that we're trying to accomplish. So none of this in the budget presentation should be in a vacuum. It should all be intertied. It should be woven into the goals that we've set. I know the board has seen these goals. You wrote these goals. You established these goals. But I want you to be aware that as we're doing this work, we're mindful of and keeping those at the forefront of our efforts. What are the major goals that you'll see throughout this budget? Facility planning, the new elementary school. We recognize that the deficiencies at GMS have just become worse over time, and we've got to do something. And so in trying to plan this budget, we are also paying attention to the need to get a school project in front of our voters this March. And so trying to find a way to work together and to have the best way to enter that into the conversation. The other thing is student needs. So you're going to hear an awful lot about the social emotional piece. You're going to hear about students who are not being traditionally successful, and that we need to make sure that we're meeting them where they are and providing the proper supports for them to be able to be successful in our school system. And finally, I always give a reminder that 76% of our budget is people, it's personnel. It's the folks who, with boots on the ground, that are working one-on-one with the students, helping them to learn what they need to learn. And, you know, so when we're asked about cutting things out of the budget, when, you know, over 3/4 of it is personnel and people, the people are at the heart of our operation and what we do. It doesn't leave an awful lot left, because when you get out of the people realm, you then have things like electricity and heat and things that we have to provide in order to make sure that people are comfortable. So there really is not a lot of excess or extra to be found, and we just have to keep the people at the center of the thought as we plug ahead. Let me talk for a second. The board has seen enrollment numbers, but I think that they are important to focus on as we go into this, because one of the things that we're facing is a declining enrollment as students are aging up elementary school. So that's presenting a little bit of a dilemma for us, because we need to plan appropriately for class sizes and success at the elementary, while at the same time absorbing fewer students or working with fewer students at the upper levels, but knowing that once they're here in the Griffin pipeline, they're on their way to the middle school and they're on their way to the high school someday. And so trying to figure out how to do this correctly is something that has to be talked about and kept in mind throughout. So you can see that in orange, the orange bar is the projection that we had for this year. How many students were we projecting that we would have in the district? And the number we had was 1164. Now that was October of 22 that we were saying we would have 1164 this year. And we actually opened the doors with 1179. So we did pick up 15 extra students across the board when we actually counted on October 1st. So our projection model was a little bit low. And I think that when you look at the numbers, Griffin was projected to be at 382, they came in at 405. And that's really where we had the Griffin surprise, if you would, where the students came and enrolled. The middle school was predicted to be at 348 and came in at 351, pretty darn close. The high school was predicted to be at 394 and came in at 382, which is a little bit lower at the high school level. And I think as we look forward to next year, we're predicting the number to stay strong at Griffin. So 414 is the number that we're modeling right now. And so we sort of have hit a low at Griffin, and it's starting to rebound a little bit. And again, you're going to hear about that story when you look at teacher projections for grades at Griffin. The middle school is projected to continue a slight decline or to level off, really. 344 is the number that we're working with there. And Campbell's going to see another drop next year. They will go from 382 to about 349. So we're going to settle in at about actually not settle in, we're going to be at 350 and then declining a little bit from there. So 325 to 350 is the number we're projecting at the high school. You all have access to this sheet, but as you work your way down in the sheet, we then have the numbers that we use to project. And what you're going to see tonight is really what to focus on is this last line, number 53. I'll highlight it across. Because when we run the projections, we take a look at the trends that we're seeing, we take a look at where our grades are and who's coming and going. We are modeling this to stay steady at zero staffing change in kindergarten. So we currently have 5. Remember, we hired a kindergarten teacher in August. And we're projecting that we're gonna need that kindergarten teacher based upon what we've seen so far. And you're gonna see that reflected in this budget. We're also projecting that the 5th kindergarten that we have this year will need to translate into a 5th first grade next year. And so you can see there is a +1 in that column. We are projecting that the 5 second graders will reduce back to 4, so there's a -1, so they offset each other. But that 5th teacher in second grade is gonna be needed in third grade next year, so there's another +1. So overall, this is showing a +1 in K through 4. And I think somebody could make the case it's really a +2, because the 5th kindergarten, although we have it this year, it was not a budgeted item, and so we have to find a way to fund and to maintain that if that's where the numbers land. The middle school, you saw the numbers were flat, so are the projections in terms of the teacher requirements there. So you're not gonna hear about teacher needs at the middle school in the same way. And you will see some reductions being taken at the high school in response to the declining enrollment. So that was something that, I indicated to the board last night that this was an unfiltered budget. It's not totally unfiltered because, as our team studied it and looked at it, we're like, we have to take a reduction at the high school when we're going down the number of students that we are. And so you'll see that reflected in the budget numbers that you get. All right, going back to the PowerPoint. I always have to remind myself, we start this process early November in terms of the public review of this. And the budget that we're talking about doesn't even start and take effect until 8 months from now. So we're already projecting out 8 months to begin the budget. And it's really 20 months out when the budget needs to carry us through. So there is a need to make sure that we are being mindful and accurate with the numbers that we present. But we always have to remember that there are unexpected things that can occur in the next 20 months. And so as we're doing this, as much as we want to be tight and we want to be surgical with some of it, there has to be the ability to plan for some unexpected things that will occur in that time. I'm going to pause because the next slide actually flips it over to Doug to carry us on to the next part of it. But I want to see if there are any questions from the board about enrollment numbers, goals, objectives, things that we've done in order to get to this point.
Any questions?
The enrollment numbers declining in the high school, have those been tracked back to low enrollments in GMS, or are you seeing that's like people leaving the district?
So let me go back to the numbers so that you can see it here. Bear with me a minute.
I know we've looked at that, but I'm
Yep.
trying to remember.
Yep. So if you roll up and you look at the, I think the story is right here, Matt. 88, 85, 85, 91. So those are the numbers of the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grades projected for next year. And if you go up in the chart, you can see that 3 years ago, we were at 118, 114, 104, and 112. So the question is, did we lose students, or is that just the nature of what was arriving? And if you go back across that column, and you look at the middle school, it was 92, 93, 88, and 90. So there were just fewer students in the pipeline, because if we just magically aged them 4 years and brought them over, we would be right where we are. So that doesn't mean that there aren't some students who have left for other educational opportunities. In the current state of where we are, parental choice and opportunities for people to exercise that choice has been enhanced over the last few years. And so I think some families are exercising that choice. Our challenge is to become the choice and to make sure that our schools are as strong as they can be, so that people are saying, I want my student to attend school in Litchfield and to graduate with a Campbell diploma. So as those opportunities increase, how do we become and position ourselves to be the choice that people have? But I think to answer your question, it really is just that the class sizes are smaller, as told by that story in the
So
numbers.
based on these trends, it's reasonable to potentially assume that the increase in enrollment in the lower grades right now will continue to trickle up to the high school. Because we're not losing, that the decline in high school enrollment wasn't as a result of people leaving the district in larger numbers.
I think it's reasonable to expect that to increase, but I still think the other part of the story is if you look at Griffin, you don't see any triple-digit classes. And at Campbell, you had all triple-digit classes not too long ago. So the class sizes are smaller, there are fewer children, but you know, we would expect as that ticks up toward the triple-digit, that would stay strong coming to the high school
Thank you.
someday. Anything else? All right, let's go back into the slide deck, and I'm going to turn this over to our business administrator, who is now in the process of guiding us through the development of his second budget in Litchfield. And he's done, I think, a pretty masterful job last year with the tasks that he was given, and he's doing a really good job of getting us off to a good start here. So, Doug, it's all yours.
Great, thanks. So as we start presenting tonight to the school board and to the community of Litchfield, we're about 2 months in the budget process ourselves, and we have multiple months to go as well. So I want to kind of start by looking at how the budget starts and how the budget ends. So it starts closest to the kids. Think about learning, we think about education, we think about those students. So it's the teachers in the classrooms that are surrounded by those 20 or so kids, meeting with their principals, the principals meeting with their admin team, and then forming a budget which then flows up from there. And how it ends is with the town vote. So New Hampshire is a local control state, and I think it's a good thing because most of your tax efforts stay for your education in your town as well. So as you're making a decision on the school, you're also making a decision on your neighbors. So it stays all within the town of Litchfield, which is great. So we're in that middle process now where the budget has come up from the schools. It hasn't really been filtered too much because the schools have been asked to keep a tight budget for years, and they want to make sure that they're focusing on learning the best way that they can as well. So, but the budget's not done. So as people learn about budget numbers, we don't want them to think that those are necessarily the numbers that they're gonna be voting on. They've elected 2 groups, school board and the budget committee, to take a look at the budget, and that's where we're kind of starting tonight with decisions to be made as we go through there. So the next slide is, whenever we talk about budget, you know, school budget, that's around 25 million for Litchfield. We also want to kind of look at what are those big impacts. That's just very typical whenever we're talking about tax money and where the money's going. So this, over the next, tonight and then next Tuesday night, you'll hear about those big impacts. Some are driven by special education, and some of those are driven by individual students. As a community, we have public schools like everyone else, and we accept every kid. And our goal is to have every kid learn and every kid grow. We can accomplish that with the majority of our students in-house, but that's not always the case. So also in there, whether it's impacting special ed, but it's also impacting regular ed as well as sports and co-curriculars, and that is transportation. So we are ending a 5-year contract with transportation, and if we look at our numbers, what we're paying per bus now, and we look at other people who have renegotiated and are in a new contract now, this year, we're paying a decent amount lower per bus. That's because there's been a lot of factors that have increased the bus rates over the last 5 years, whether that be diesel or the demand for drivers, because again, large bus drivers are CDL, and there's big demand for CDL drivers for trucking across the country as well. So those wages have had to increase. So we would be starting a new contract next year, whether we stay with our current company or whether we move to another company. There is no way except to bump up in the price that we're paying per bus. So that you'll see kind of trickle in different parts of the budget. Next thing we talked about, while there's a decrease in enrollment, there are enrollment numbers at GMS which have risen, which typically would trigger an additional teacher as we try to keep the student to teacher ratio at a level where learning can happen when the needs of those students are the most. What I mean by the needs is they're less self-sufficient. So the teacher is busy with the learning factor, but more social emotional, and also just making sure kids are, kind of walking around the right way with scissors and things like that. So, and lastly, we have healthcare. These are projected increases. As we hear, we're not gonna find out our actual increases, I think, until November 15th, roughly. And our projected increases are lower than what other towns have been seeing, because they told us a number that it might cap out at, but we're not. So we use 10% as that placeholder. Our hope is that it's less than 10%. There are several places that have been over 10% as they've been creating their budgets in the state this year as well. So those will be gone over as we have different people up here talking through the budget. And we definitely expect after we talk about the budget that there's gonna be questions about that as well. We welcome those questions. So as we look at any budget, we are always looking back as well to compare. So the top part probably should be fixed a little bit, fiscal year 20 to 23 or 24. But as we look back to fiscal year 20, and luckily next year this will be kind of off our radar, but that's when, as we know, COVID started, and that's when learning was altered as we've always known it. So instead of being at school, kids were at home, and therefore there were a lot of expenses that didn't need to happen at that point. That year, the goal was to return a lot to the taxpayers, and that was accomplished. So fiscal year 21 was still impacted by COVID, as there was a hybrid model where there were some kids at home, some kids who were not at home, and expenditures ended up being lower than budgeted as well due to impacts of that as well. Moved into fiscal year 22, so school was back to normal, but that's when Litchfield started having more difficulty hiring positions. So we've been hearing about education and lack of teachers and lack of assistants for over 10 years. It hasn't necessarily hit New England during that time, but New England's kind of seen the impact of that the last 5 years for the majority of New England or New Hampshire. So it's caught up with our region as well. So last year, we had significant challenges hiring paraprofessionals and custodians, which brought a fund balance at the end of the year. So again, the expenses were less than the budget in a lot of the hiring last year. So we still are continuing to feel that this year, where we're not able to hire paraprofessionals and custodians to the extent that we would want to the extent that we feel is best serving our students and our school and our community. So for those reasons, there's different averages that are skewed as we look back. So we just want to kind of keep that in mind. Also important to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples is the fiscal year 24 budget. So our goal has always been to have budget documents come directly from eFinance. So not to manipulate those documents. So last year, when we went throughout the process, going from schools to superintendent, to school board, to budget committee, we ended up with a general fund approved balance budget of $24,180,328. So that doesn't include the land purchase, it's just because I want to talk about apples to apples. So just what is typically in our normal operating expenses for a school year. So as you look at any budget documents this year, eFinance is pulling a different number. So we wanted there to be clarity in why there is a difference in that. So eFinance is pulling a number of $24,758,948. So what makes up that difference? So it starts with big chunks. It starts with the 3 warrant articles that were approved by taxpayers that then bump fiscal year 23 money to fiscal year '24. So money that we did not expend in '23. So the warrant articles are, you know, they're appropriating money, but they're not raising money because that money's already been raised. So those three articles add into the fiscal year '24 budget. So that increased the budget by $350,000. Then we have what is typically happening at a lot of schools, which is board improved encumbrances as we get to the end of the year. And a lot of ours we're focusing on safety. So we came to the board with ideas that would help us make sure that the students and the staff are more secure. Some of those needs we've been able to meet through SAFE grants, which are coming in from the state. We just applied for 3 more SAFE grants for additional cameras. But some of the needs we also believe can be impacted by local funds to make sure that we are kind of keeping up with where we want to be. SAFE grants come and go, and we don't control the timing of them, nor do we control whether we get selected for the SAFE grants or not. So we bumped up in safety, whether that be additional blue lights, additional radios, but we also, Wi-Fi, but we also bumped up in, or looked at ways that we could save money going down the road. So one of those is a reading contract. We got a much better deal if we purchase a multi-year reading contract with all the money up front. So the decision was, well, it's gonna save Litchfield taxpayers money in the future, let's go ahead and do that. And then there's some other smaller expenses in there as well. And the last thing you see on there is a pool of money each year that goes towards the staff that make up the buildings and the SAU that are not part of the union, so to make sure that they're keeping up with inflation or they're getting raises. So some of that would obviously go to somebody in food service, but it starts in Fund 10. So when we transfer it out to food service, that's why there's a negative amount coming from that as well. So that was approved money from the town that's in a pool of money that then gets dispersed out to people who are not in unions. So when we add that and then subtract that one line, that's where we're coming up with what you'll now see on e-finance for fiscal year '24. So we could manipulate that out, but again, our goal has been to keep the budget documents solely coming from e-finance and not, whether it's the budget documents that we kind of look at on a monthly basis or the budget documents, having them come directly from e-finance. So that's why you can see that there are some, what could be looked at discrepancies but are not discrepancies. So with that, apples to apples, you know, we wouldn't be looking at e-finance fiscal year '24 to '25. We'd be looking at actual '24 to '25. So again, what was approved by the school board, budget committee, and then town for last year, as well as what's being presented now as we are part way through the budget, not at the end of the budget. And that's where we're at an increase of 7.77%. So with such an increase, obviously there's been a lot of prep work by multiple people. You can see a lot of them here tonight, and there'll be additional people here on Tuesday to kind of describe how those increases came into where they work, whether it be a school or what they oversee as directors as well. I have another.
Nope, you're done.
No.
Unless you want to take questions.
So I'm always happy to take questions.
Any questions from the board?
Very thorough, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so let's move over to Dan and kind of start with those schools, where the kids are, where they start with us in Litchfield.
Absolutely. So, as already mentioned, one of the biggest drivers of my budget was just the increase in enrollment. So a lot of the lines you'll see that it's broken down by a cost per pupil times the number of pupils gives you that number. And I also want to recognize that between the budget committee and the school board, you both have the budget printout, and you realize that right there on page 1, I start off with a bang because page 1 alone is up 15 grand. But some of that will get sussed out as you go through the budget, because one of the areas that, in addition to creating the budget, we also wanted to clean it up from last year. If you go back to last year, I'd asked the question as to whether or not you wanted kindergarten still to be kind of broken out into its own budget category. We believe that harkened back to the days when either it was the first years of K being full-time or when K was a part-time program, so it was separated out. So I moved that all in there. And so that really accounts for a huge chunk of that regular ed increase that you see right off the bat. Later on page 4, you'll realize that that's all kind of taken away. However, I did leave the notes in the kindergarten just so you can see how that is broken down. Also, some of those kindergarten amounts that were in there, you're going to see appear in other areas as well. So for instance, kindergarten was broken down in terms of regular ed supplies. I moved that over. But there are also things like some of the stuff in the kindergarten line is going to appear again, I believe, like in the reading line or in the math line. And so recognizing that, I tried to make adjustments based on need. There's another big increase there, which was the furniture line. I'm asking for it this year only because we've been doing one classroom a year, and recognizing that every year when we do one classroom, the cost creeps up a little bit. We're down to just 2 classrooms left. So I kind of said, let's just get them done this year. And so I'm offering that up as red meat for you for later on discussions. But I wanted to say, we're just there, and it's coming up, so I thought might as well just throw it in there. Everything else that's really an increase has to do with mostly set prices. So we did make a switch over the past couple of years, going from Project Lead the Way in science to Mystery Science. Mystery Science comes with a subscription as well as a kit fee. Much like with Project Lead the Way, where in the early stages, but if you remember with Project Lead the Way, you would buy these kits, and the kits come with supplies, and then the supplies have all the different components in there. And what ended up happening is you would have a lot of one of the components left and not a lot of the other ones, and we figured we could figure it out because there were specific things that they didn't let you buy a la carte. With the Mystery Science, it being early on right now, we're buying the kits, but we also recognize that there may be components of those left over, so we can find some savings in the later years. So that's one of the other drivers. Other than that, I will say I believe it's mostly a straight budget. Another area where you're going to see big fluctuations is that we had conversations because, and I'll admit it didn't make much sense, which was the breakdown later on in the budget between co-curriculars and student activities. And you saw a little, why is that a co-curricular, why is that a student activity? So in meeting with Superintendent Jetty, Mr. Totten, we kind of agreed that if there was a stipend associated with it, that kind of made it a co-curricular. If there was no stipend and staff with it, that became more of a student activity. And so we cleaned that up. There's not a huge fluctuation. If anything, I believe it may actually net or delta be a decrease. But what we did was we just kind of moved things around. Other than that, the rest of the increases and decreases were more about usage, history. You'll notice that math is down a little bit because in looking at our actual expenditures, we weren't expending as much. We did that per classroom. And in working with staff, we realized that we were giving them an allotment in regular ed. You have this much in regular ed to spend, you have this much in math supplies. And they were really reaching their max in the regular ed, and they're saying, can I use some of my math to guide this? And I would say like, well, no, we should reflect where you're buying that. And so what we were able to do is reduce that math down. I believe last year it was at $95 a class, and now we've brought it down to $70 a class. Again, net about equal, but really just trying to reflect more, I guess, I don't want to say honest, but more true to the spending habits and where that money is coming from, so that we recognize that the dollars allocated are the dollars being spent for those specific reasons. So we started on page 1, and it looked like we're up 16 grand. In the end, we're up 12.8. So that's a brief overview, and I will, I guess, open myself up for any questions.
I think this is the part where we typically go page by page. But
Yep.
it's your call on.
Yep.
So
no,
I'm
I-
ready to go. That's okay.
Meaning page by page, or
Oh,
you
yeah.
already have questions?
I have lots of questions
All right, well, let's start with page 1.
for everybody. Page 1, under line 610, so the third one down to start us off.
Yes, please.
Yep, supplies. So historically, this has been budgeted at grades 1 through 4. This year, it's grades kindergarten through 4.
Yep.
Not saying I dispute that.
Yep.
Just clarifying if that was the intent.
Yeah, so that's where you see on page 4, the kindergarten separated budget is wiped out down to 0. So what I've done is
rolled it.
I've assumed it all into this line.
Gotcha.
And in future budgets, that kindergarten section will disappear. I left it here for note purposes.
Yep. All right. So great. Agree on the 414 for the projection. My question also is on the disposable headphones for testing. You had that at 311. Should that actually be 414?
No, because that is just 1 through 4.
That is just 1 through 4.
Yeah.
So 1 through 4, then when I count the projections, it's actually 322, not 311.
Okay. I will make that correction.
Just as a heads up.
Yep.
And that's per the model that was just displayed.
Mhm.
So there's an increase. Furniture replacement, thanks for addressing that. That's it for page 1 for me.
Anyone else have questions on page 1?
Just with respect to furniture replacement, obviously, we don't know what's gonna happen with the new school, but would all of the furniture that's being purchased be able to be, I mean, it's gonna have cross applicability to a new school? I would
Yeah,
say.
so for the last, well, I guess 4 years, for the last 3 years that I've created the budget, any hardware, the rule has always been, is transferable. And also, we weren't buying things to address deficiencies in the building. So for instance, there's storage, so we kind of stopped buying storage cabinets. We figured out how to do that. But anything that we purchased, it's with the assumption that it goes wherever we go.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just for consistency's sake, do you want budget committee questions as you go page by page to hold them to the end for GMS? Or what process do we want to use for that?
I feel like in the past, we've held them to the end of each presentation.
That's fine.
Does that make sense? Then we can go through
And
and,
then I'll turn around.
yeah, and then you can turn around, yeah.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, so we'll do it by the end of each presentation rather than at the end of the night.
Yep.
I think that makes
That's
sense.
fine. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on page 1? Page 2? Questions? None? Page 3?
Page 3, line 640, towards the bottom, right? So textbook replacement under
Reading?
reading,
Yep.
yes. So I think there's just a math error. 50 times 9 is 450, not 500. And 200 times 9 is 1800, not 2000.
Yep. So we need to make that 450. And what was the other one?
1800, so
1800.
200 times 9.
Yep. I will check because that's either a math error or a note error. So let me clarify with Ms. Tate.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on page 3? Page 4? Page 5? Page 6?
Just to point out, page 4 is where you see kindergarten wiped out to 0,
Yeah.
as well as the cleanup of co-curricular and student activities.
Yep. 5, 6, 7.
649, so the DVDs, are we still purchasing and using DVDs with all the interconnectivity today?
I ask that to Mrs. Prevel-Trammell every year, and she assures me that they are, and she shows me the receipts. I will continue to verify. I will continue to verify. I asked that same exact question.
Okay. Also on the conferences, under 272 for school administration,
Yes.
that doubled?
Yes. So, and I made that very specific. So, I can speak for myself, and I believe the others concur. We, with the Principals Association, and I'll say this publicly, there were years that the annual conference was deemed no longer valuable. There was a change in leadership, and it has become a very valuable conference. I was able to go last year, and in order to test this, I actually presented, and that way I could get a free admission, and then we're able to deem it. As well as in the summer, there is the Drummond and Woodson Law Conference. So that would be, it's just 2 conferences in the summer that we've deemed as valuable professional development opportunities. So we'd ask that opportunity.
Okay.
And I believe that's consistent across the 2 schools.
That's what I
3
was gonna
schools.
say, we discussed that as a team, and you're gonna see that increase across the board.
Yes.
Those 2 conferences have truly become must-attend events.
The Drummond and Woodson Law Conference covers all school law and any changes or updates to school law, which is really imperative for us to make sure that we're on the right page and enforcing things that are current and present with what's going on in our state.
All right, thank you. And under 430 clock system repair, I noted that was in our FY '24 budget. Just curious if it needs to carry over into FY '25.
I'm sorry, where?
Clock system repair was on the
Oh,
same
430.
page. Yeah,
Is the clock broken still?
right. 'Cause we-
I believe I don't believe it's repair, I believe it's just an annual maintenance fee
Got it.
that kind of comes in, tweaks it, and we have, obviously, you're not gonna be surprised, as we have an antiquated clock system, and it's basically the base in the office, and, well, we're gonna be dealing with it next week, cause we have a time change going on, so.
Same.
Any other questions?
I
on
will
the-
verify on what our annual expense is to make sure that we're actually spending that every single year, though.
No, I think it's helpful just to say it's actually maintenance and not repair.
Yeah, it's maintenance, yep.
Okay.
I can make a change to that now.
Thanks.
Page 7? Anything else? Page 8?
Page 8, at the top of page 8 is the dues.
Mhm.
And I noted that also was significantly increased from year over year.
Yes, so, what that actually does is, and that's an error on my part, I hadn't been updating what the actuals were for the past 2 years, and so we got verified numbers for what we had been assuming, the increases. And so what I've done is reflected what the dues actually are for those organizations.
So 825 for both
Yeah.
yourself and the assistant principal. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else on page 8? And then page 9. Any other board questions on the GMS budget before I open it to budget committee questions? Hearing none, I'm gonna open the floor to budget committee. Welcome. He's gonna spin his chair around.
Not so smoothly.
Are there any questions on the budget for GMS? You can spin your chair back around. Perfect. Spin it back.
Kidding.
So, and maybe it's just,
So you can ask me about recorders, Brian.
not yet. And maybe it's just the way it's written, but on page 3, and I thought you like it's 50 times 9, is correct, but it says for small groups, but you list 200 students, which is more than you have before combined, so it's, I take it small groups with everyone.
Yeah, so we buy them for all the students to then be utilized in the small groups, if that makes sense. So,
Are they reading more than one book, I guess? Right, that's what you're asking, right, Brian?
No. Not like, maybe that's what it is, so it's more than one title.
yes, it's more than one title, it's level readers, it's usually novel studies, things like that.
Got it. Like I said, two other quick questions, I'm not sure whether, excuse me, page 7. Has GMS always paid for the K-12 licensing, or is it spread out, all 3 schools have a portion? You do, all right.
Yes.
Yes.
You'll notice, Brian, it says 1/3 of the total, and you'll see the same number reflected. That's the
Alright.
Swain movie licensing,
Yep.
and it's allocated 1/3 each.
So I believe before last year, it was part of a different line of the budget. I think it was actually the business part of the budget, and so we put it back to the schools.
So it is all three.
And I'm told a trademark infringement case costs much more.
The last question I have, and again, goes to probably all 3 schools, are we still mailing that much?
Yes, yeah, so,
We haven't done something where it can be just electronic.
so, so at the beginning of the year, so in elementary school, you're talking, I know this sounds small, but you're talking the summer letters home from the teachers, you're talking the initial packets. That includes some beginning of school paperwork, as well as like the pickup procedure cards are in there. And then throughout the year, there's a number of, and we're talking like heavy, like expensive envelopes, when we're talking about records transfers to different schools, as well as oftentimes special ed paperwork that needs to be sent certified mail. So then, I mean, certified mail, you're talking, that's like $9 or $10 just for, you know, a regular envelope for signed receipt.
So just like regular US mail, has that been reduced greatly at this point? I understand the records and that type of thing.
Yeah.
You have to. But I'm I'm just talking about regular correspondence. I mean, we can do electronically rather than mail.
I would say a lot has been replaced electronically, but there are still certain aspects, again, like that summer mailing, which we do send home in the summer, and we do, you'll see that we utilize that postage quite often. So again, in the summer, you're talking summer, for the most part, I mean, you're talking about, you know, what do we say, about 411, you know, letters are going home, you know, the summer greeting letter from the teacher. Yes, could we do that electronically? Yeah, but 6-year-olds love getting mail in the mailbox as well, letter sent, so it's something we pay for kind of culture and climate reasons as well.
Brian, when we asked Dan about that, when we met with him, he talked about the culture and climate of that, but then also because of the complexity of drop-off and pickup, because it backs up on 3A, they feel that they need to send it home to make sure that everyone has it and everyone's prepared for that, to help out with that as much as they
We
can.
over-communicate on that one.
Yeah.
That's in addition to.
Have you guys just done like a video if it's that complicated, that would send him a big packet, like a video that you post?
No, what we're sending home is not necessarily the explanation, but also if you come to a parent pickup, you'll see that it's broken down in alphabetical groups, so it's a verification system, so we don't let a kid in the car unless they have the school issued pink card that has the student's name on it, the yellow card, the blue card.
I'm actually agreeing with Mr. Burke here that I think there has to be a way to economize efficiency ways. In today's day and age, I appreciate the culture and climate and kids like email, like regular mail. But I also like regular email too. We all have email addresses, so when we're looking at the increases we are as a grand scale, I think we have to look at areas where we can find some savings.
We have tried to find ways that we can be more economical, but I think there's also places in operations where we also need to build in redundancy as well, especially in communications when we're talking about student safety and kind of physical plant protocols.
Dan, I have a question on bottom of page 8, page 9, the transportation. It has a 6.7% increase. Is that based on the new contract? That's what that
I'm going to defer to Doug gave me that
percentage?
number.
And I assume that's going to be consistent across the schools as well. Transportation increases. Is that where that 6.7 comes from?
Yeah, so it's based on the new contract, which has not been signed. But again, no matter where we go, it's gonna go up in percent, no matter who we sign with. So it's 6.7. I know a lot of times we're talking about close to a 20% increase. So the 20% increase is on the main transportation, because again, they use a lot of their main transportation to pay not only the salaries, but then the benefits of the drivers as well, where things after main transportation, those add-ons, it's more just based on the salary of the driver.
They also said like the cost of the bus is factored in. I mean, the bus is provided for in that main part, the bus itself, and then it's really the labor that's in the additional.
So their labor costs have gone up. That's what that
Their
reflects.
labor
Yep.
costs have gone up substantially, and they're not rebilling us for the cost of the bus itself, because they already have it in the main transportation part, so it's not as high in the field trip.
Thank you.
Any other questions from Budget Committee? Last chance, any other questions from board members?
I
Seeing
think
none?
it's spin at the same time.
So we're gonna shift over to the middle school if you're ready, and Principal Grantham is up front. Dan came solo tonight, so thanks for being kind to him, he didn't have backup, but I see Martha sitting behind me, so.
She's almost my sidekick. It's
you know,
fantastic to have Martha.
Somebody's got your back, Jen.
She's got my back. It's
Go.
good things. So, talking a little bit about the budget and overall increases that you're definitely going to see throughout the LMS budget, I just want to talk about this summer when we sat with you all and we went over our data and went over where our students were. You asked us to come back and tell you what we needed. So when we went back to our staff, that's what we were asking as we were having those conversations. It was saying, what do you need in order for your students to be successful? What do you need in order for your environment to be able to provide for the learnings of our students that are in front of us today? So our overall decreases that you're going to see as part of our budget come from the music equipment lease rental. We finished year 5 of 5 last year, so we now own that equipment, which is nice to have in our possession, and we don't have anything on that line. You're going to see we've spent a lot of money in our library media center in regards to furniture and equipment and materials over the last several years. So that was a place where we felt like we could safely decrease a significant number in regards to the overall budget in that area. And then there was a minor decrease in cost for professional memberships based on what we had allotted in years prior. So there was a small decrease there. You're going to see overall supply lines, cost increases as a whole have been astronomical for us. Just to give you an idea of where we are today, our current expenditures for this year is up to, I'm sorry, hang on a second, I have to do the math in my head again, 63% of our budget for the year in regards to that 610 line is spent at this point in time. So I'm going to say that again. We're in October, we just finished October, 63% of our budget right now for what our teachers are needing in order to instruct and learn today is gone for our fiscal year 24. So we're tightening belts, we're looking at making sure that we're being cautious in what we're spending, but it's not about going willy-nilly and buying everything under the sun. It's about things that are required for students and for learning and for teachers to be able to perform what they need to perform. So those supply line increases have been huge. You're going to see a large increase in our furniture replacement line. What I'm going to say to you is I'm not going to make the same mistake that was made before. So about 4 years ago, you would have seen a furniture line that was a great small number. However, the furniture was absolute junk. And with all the movement that we've done with the construction over the last 3 years and moving tables and moving classrooms in and out, the tables, brand new tables that were purchased 4 years ago, are particle board and have disintegrated to nothing. So we have classrooms that don't have, they're literally duct taped together or have been screwed to their last screw. We have things that have been broken. I have pictures in here to show you if you're interested in seeing them of why we have science stools as a request for a replacement. They literally have cracked edges that as kids' hands are going to pull them in, they can get cut on the edges of the chairs. They have stools that are counter height for our 7th grade science lab because that's what the seating is in that classroom. They're missing the footrest for the kids, so there's nothing keeping those stools from spreading out. A student could sit on that and it could go at any given time. So it's about safety for our students in that way. That's why we have those included in there. We have a new music teacher this year who has requested music software for recording purposes. That is an increase this year. And you'll see throughout our budget some culture and climate increases for student, staff, and community connections. The reason that we have those increases in our budget is to get on par. I would often go to Dan and go, wait a minute, how are you buying pizza for your staff, or how are you buying pizza for your kids? Where is that money coming from in order to support, positive things happening in the classroom? We didn't have it budgeted for in ours. Both of my counterparts did. This is just to get us on par with GMS and CHS in regards to those increases. You will see a physical education budget line increase to allow for purchase of equipment for outdoor play and outdoor recess, which has been a clamoring and a request by our entire community. We're looking to support that, but the kids need something to do. They can't go out and just stand on pavement and do nothing. So looking to get that equipment to help support that outdoor play. And then really astronomical is the increase to transportation lines. That is something that really is hitting us in regards to both our athletics transportation and our co-curricular transportation. It's something that, we're trying to be really thoughtful about what we're doing, but we don't want to cut back on our students being able to travel because we think that that's important for our sports teams to be able to get out there and compete. They do such an excellent job. That is where we are overall. That ends what I have on my notes, but I welcome any questions you may have.
All right, we'll start with page 1, questions.
Under the furniture replacement, 737, thanks for highlighting the need for just maintenance. The question I have specifically is on replacement chairs for band music and 10 at 170. You see that?
Yep.
That says year 2 of 4. Year 1, we purchased 5 chairs. Why the increase?
It was 5, a pack of 5, which was 10 chairs. So it was year one, last year, we purchased 5 packs of 2 chairs per pack, so it was 10 chairs total. And we have 2 music classes, so we have both the band and the chorus room. Right now, the chorus room is using folding chairs from our collection for any activities that we have
I
that
see.
our community
So the
uses.
comment is different this year, it's the same number, it's just
Correct.
written differently?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Five pair chair.
Hmm?
5 pair chair.
5 pair of chairs, I don't know how else to say it.
So with, can I ask under 610 supplies with the culture and climate responsive classroom supplies, is that the, what you were just talking about?
That is a combination of literal responsive classroom supplies. So one of the things that we have done this year, there's been a book that we purchased as part of a book study that we've done this year. There are additional books that will help us to continue to refine our practice in regards to that as a staff. So to help to make sure that our staff is staying up to date and trained in the process that we've been using. And additionally, that would be the culture and climate for helping to bring in things for our whole community. So that's across the board.
Any other questions on page 1? Page 2? I just want you to know I have a smiley face next to the $2,000 and said yes for the outdoor recess.
I thought you might like that. I know I get a reputation for wanting to kill joy, but I really don't. I want it to be fun for kids and I want it to be good.
So I have a smiley face for that, that's good. Any other questions on 2?
Also like it, right? The question is where you're gonna put it and what is it?
So we've had some conversations with our team within our building. There was some question of, I'm gonna say, as a staff, there was pushback on, I don't just want to have recess where kids are going out and willy-nilly and anything can happen, and in middle school that can end very badly very quickly. So they want to have things that kids can utilize, Nerf footballs, using jump ropes, things that they can have in a tub that travels with the grade level. So when the grade level has a scheduled time, that would be part of the schedule that we're building for next year. They have that 10 to 15 minutes of actual outdoor playtime. They take their tub of equipment outside, they utilize the equipment, goes back in, and it comes back inside, and it stays with that grade level.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on page 2?
The consumable manipulative to support homeschool, that was more than doubled from last year, just curious why?
So, hang on a second, I have to look back at what the reason was behind that. So that was in order to send home, devices and equipment to help support math at home. I think we have the devices, we have the Chromebooks and those things. There are things that are happening, requiring protractors, rulers and straight edges that kids may not have at home. So we want to be able to have those little quick toolkits as they're working on studying angles and having that information. I know that is doubled, but when you're talking about over the course of 350 kids, believe it or not, those things are really expensive. As you look at buying a set for a group, we can also seek parent support, but we know we're going to parents for a lot, and we wanted to be able to make sure that we could provide that accessible education for all.
Thank you.
Page 2, any more?
We're in 2 or 3.
We're on page
Did I just scroll
2.
ahead on my own?
Yeah, no, we're at the very bottom of page 2. So now we can flip to page 3. Questions?
So the increase in the music software, is that going to be in conjunction with a newly offered course, or is that something that's currently offered?
So we, with the new alignment of ensuring that all students have access to all unified arts across the grade levels, we have added some new courses, including in 8th grade this year. There's the history of rock and roll. That is something that was offered in the past that came back. The kids are actually having a really good time with it. If you've heard your 8th graders talking about it, it's studying back to the Beatles and all kinds of really cool stuff going on. This would be for that general music class to be able to record. So we have guitars and we have keyboards and we have ukuleles that the kids use on a regular basis. It would allow that in conjunction with their Chromebook to record themselves in an audio file that they can save and manipulate to get themselves on tune if they need to. I'm not really familiar with the program itself, but I do have a description here if somebody is interested in knowing what the price quote means for soundtrack. I've got it all here if you're interested in what soundtrack is.
So it
and
would
how
just be
works.
used in conjunction with the current classes. It'd be okay.
Yep. we have a new teacher who, that was one of her requests.
Anything else on page 3? Page 4? Page 5? Page 6?
Sorry, page 5.
Back to page 5.
Yep. Underneath game officials, 391, I noticed a new line for single ref contingency fees.
So that is part of our agreement with Tri-County, in order to be part of the Tri-County League, which is like NHIAA for the high school, but the mini version for middle school. In order to be part of Tri-County, we have to agree to referee rules and settings. So for example, if, again, finding staffing for everything is a challenge, including referees, there are certain sports that if they don't have 2 referees for a sport like basketball, there's a contingency that referee fee for the single ref goes from $75 up to $112 to be able to pay that single ref. So we have it incorporated in there. If we don't use it, we will send it back to you, but we needed to have something budgeted in there because I'm finding that's a place where we didn't recognize an increase last year. So our previous budget had lower numbers for all of our referees. So I wanted to make sure that I was accounting for that because that did occur to us once or twice last year where we had to.
So if we're budgeting for 2 referees and only 1 shows up, are we only paying, or are we paying for 2 referees still?
No, we're paying for 1.
But you're paying the
Or we're
increased rate.
112.
You're paying 112, not 75 for that one.
Oh, right, it's 75 for 2 referees.
75 each.
Yep.
And if one of them doesn't show up, then that rate goes up to 112 for the one, instead of 150 for 2.
75, right. But, so I'm confused about why you budget.
So I can take that line out if you're.
Well, no, I get, no, the only reason I'm asking is because if you're budgeting for 150 per game.
Yep.
And only 1 shows up and that 1 is getting 112,
Correct.
why do you need a contingency?
Correct.
I wanted to indicate it. You can happily
Yeah.
take that out. That's not a problem. That's in the place you can cut right now.
On the porta potties
Yes.
for LMS, I mean, we see the manifests, right? And the manifests are about $550 for those porta potties, so curious how we get to 1,400.
So that amount came from a contract that we got to put it out for this year. I think it came from Ann, the number that we got for that. It
I think
used
the
to be in the.
550 was a multiple month by the time it came in. So what we did, we tried to do it for a couple months. This one was a couple months in the spring and a couple months in the fall, or was it just because it's
So
it's down at GMS.
Yep, it's for the GMS fields
Yeah.
for softball and baseball.
Yeah, so we tried to use their per month and then multiply by the months that we thought it would be out there.
So are you confident in that 1,400? Because it seems high.
That was going off most recent numbers that we had.
Okay.
Because there's a delivery for it as well too, so.
That used to be in buildings and grounds, and that was
Yeah.
moved over to our fund
Yep.
recently.
Anything else on page 5? Page 6? Page 7?
Page 6, 810, dues and fees. The legal dues, sorry, excuse me, the league dues and entry fees has gone up $700.
Yes. That is coming straight again from Tri-County League.
Okay, thank you.
Page 6?
Page 6, also under 610, the media safety programming, $2,500 at the bottom of page 6.
So that is an increase, if you remember last year, as a community, we brought in the video screenagers to screen for the whole community. We are looking for things right now to get speakers to come out, to get presentations to be able to come in on different issues and challenges that we're facing as a middle school. And what I'm finding is the cost, again, is astronomical. What we had budgeted as $1,000 for a speaker, when I call and say that's what our budget is, the speakers laugh at me and say, good luck, no thank you, not coming, not gonna happen. So the minimum that I'm finding for a speaker to be able to come for even just one presentation is about $2,500 on various different levels.
So is that necessary? Do we need to have that?
I think based on what we have happening in the middle school, I would say absolutely.
And what was the turnout for screenagers?
For screenagers, that's a different story. This, what I'm talking about here is more for an in-building, in-school presentation of a speaker that comes and
Okay.
talks about anti-bullying, talks about issues that we're having as a school to help put positive messages forward that are coming from, we have, right now we're working on getting a dirt bike presentation. So it's like an assembly that you would have. Our PTO is contributing, and they're contributing a $500 allotment to that. So we have to pick up the rest in order to make sure that that can cover our whole school.
And there was a high attendance at screenagers, but I think it was school-wide, so it was advertised across CHS, GMS, I think it was district-wide, so I don't know what was attributable to LMS population, but there was a fair number of parents there.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's important messaging, even if we end up with 50 to 100, I think it's important messaging.
Anything else on page 6?
Yes, on 738, the FM system for 504. This is a common theme throughout this entire budget with these FM systems. We're budgeting them year after year after year, right? And I know that this particular line had $500 for one student, I think, for this current year, and now it's going up to $2,000.
So that is based on 504s, both existing and incoming. And what's different about that for us is that at GMS, if you put an FM system in, it's in the classroom that the child is in, and it stays with the classroom all day. When you come to LMS, that system has to travel with the child. It follows the child where they go, from room to room, and class to class as they go. So it's just an increase in that expectation. It's part of a legal expectation that we have with 504, that we provide that if it is part of the student's disability and need. And we're finding more and more students with that.
Don't we already have FM systems at the middle
They
school?
follow the child.
So they go with the child,
Mhm.
but we can't go with the child from GMS to LMS.
No, because they're,
Because of the
at
transition.
GMS, they have the microphone system that
Stays in
amplifies
the
the whole
amplifier.
class. We don't have that now. That could be something we look at shifting to, if that's something the board wishes to do. It's not cheap either, but it would mean we do it once and cover our whole building. It would just be a significant expenditure to start.
Yeah, it's just an observation, right?
Yep.
Throughout the budget, we budget a lot of money every year for these FM systems. And the question becomes, do we get more than 1 year out of them? Like,
Yeah, we do. We do, it follows the child, so each time a new student is identified with that as a need, we need to make sure that we have the money budgeted to support the new students that have that.
okay, thank you.
Anything else on page 6?
Well, I guess just following up on that, so how long are those systems lasting for? Are they following the student the entire time that they're in the school, or do they are?
Yep, and they would go, if a student has a system with us, it would travel to Campbell to stay with that student, because the systems that we're purchasing would function with them at Campbell as well.
Gotcha.
The difference from here to here is that they have the classroom amplifier
Right.
that doesn't travel with the child, and at middle school, you just, because of the nature of the classes, they're bouncing from place to place. So it's a difference.
I could just speak for GMS. What we find is that the systems themselves tend to have good longevity. What we're starting to age out is actually on the microphones themselves. And so when you have the microphones themselves, there's, like any kind of rechargeable thing, the battery tends to die, and it's not an easy battery. You kind of have to ship it out, and then they make an assessment on it, and they ship it back, and that can be a little costly.
Anything else, page 6? Page 7? Page 8?
Page 7, 644, information access fees, noodle tools, encyclopedias, and innovation at LMS. All those are significant increases. They were each $100 in fiscal year '24.
I see that total as 1,100,
Oh, I'm sorry,
In fiscal year
I
24?
misspoke. They're up $100 each.
$100 total.
No, $300 total, $100 each line. Is that subscription based?
That is subscription based, but I'm not seeing that math. Hang on a second. If I look at FY '24 budget, 1,100, I see FY '25 requested 1,200. Is that not a different
14.
one?
So it's 14.
644.
14, 13.
So up one,
Up one, there we
yeah.
go, sorry. So yes, those are, subscription costs that have increased by $100 each for those subscriptions. And the LMS portion, Noodle Tools, is something that we share with Campbell. Noodle Tools is about bibliographies and making sure children know how to cite their works versus pirating and copying straight from the internet.
Okay, thank you.
Page 7. Page 8.
Page 8 is the conference, same thing, right, with the
Same
law?
thing, yep. So I can speak, I think, for Jake and myself. We went to the Drummond Woodsum Law Conference this summer, and although it was anxiety inducing, it was very critical that we were there to hear the messages, because there are updates to state laws each year in regards to education, and we want to make sure that we're honoring and respecting that and keeping our professional duties up to date.
Under 890 miscellaneous, there's the addition of $400 for some t-shirts. There's an increase of $500 for culture and climate. Just curious what you have planned.
So the increase for the t-shirts was a suggestion by our relationship with Bill Preble and the Center for Culture and Climate. It is about making sure the kids are feeling connected to the program and to itself. So purchasing a t-shirt for each of the kids that are part of that C3PO, creating a culture and climate for positive outcomes, so that they are not only representing, but they're representing that mission, and that was a suggestion by the Bills. And then the culture and climate activities, including appreciation, is for that C3PO team, as well as bringing in parents to help support that as well.
Anything else on page 8? Page 9?
On page 9, yeah, this one threw me off a little bit. So under the 519 transportation line, understand costs are up. On this particular budget, you break it out per soccer, lacrosse, basketball, etc., which is great. Each of those lines are up at the increased rate, and then in addition to that, you're adding another 6.7% on top of that.
So this was a place that we were supposed to go back and take a look at. When we were functioning through the budget and functioning, we were trying to take a look at what the costs were. For example, in this year's budget, we didn't have it broken down by sport and by team. So let's say hypothetically the girls volleyball team had a Saturday tournament at Nashua North. That bus for the Saturday tournament at Nashua North this year, I just got the bill for $684 for that bus. That was not a calculated total within what we have. Even if you look at these totals, that $256.80 is on the lower end of how much those buses can cost to go. That's not every bus is going to be that guaranteed. That's the mean number for the buses. So I wanted to build in a buffer, because as I'm going through living the budget this year, we don't have enough to cover the costs for the kids to travel for sports. I'm nervous that we're gonna have enough to cover the end of this year.
But we should know the actual rate of the buses.
We should know the actual rate of the buses, but we don't know where they're traveling. So if next year Tri-County says, okay, LMS, you're traveling this year to Hampstead, and so let's say they tell us our away games are far places versus we're traveling to, Brian, give me a closer place. Where do you travel that's closer? Auburn. It's around the corner. It's 15 miles, 20 miles away versus going to Hampstead, Seacoast area. That's a little bit of a longer haul. So we know who our teams are we travel against, but we don't know if we have away games or home games until those calendars are set next year.
So
Is that also accounting for postseason too?
Yes.
At the bottom?
Yep.
So the 256.80 would be for 4 hours at our current rate. So it's kind of buffering for that time for the bus to get here, bus to then drive to the location and then wait for the sport event
Yeah.
and then come back as well. So that's if you divide by 4, you're at $64.20, which is our cost per hour for sports. A reason for the LMS athletic increase is centered a little bit around the lacrosse. So lacrosse has been funded this past year, by the town, this year,
By self-funding means.
self-funding, so self-funding, this year, self-funding, but then it would be built into the budget as long as it was accepted by the school board. So we budgeted it in, because we can't budget in the number after the acceptance or not the acceptance. So as you see the increase there, it is because you see the boys line, the girls line for lacrosse.
Yeah.
There's also a bump up in postseason, for that as well.
So the 25680 was based off of the current year contract, not based off of what we had in front of us.
It was a joint effort, but when I divided it out, I got 4 hours, so for me, I'm like, well, that must be what they based it
Yeah.
off of. So, yeah, 64.20 per hour for 4 hours, where next year it goes up to 68.50 per hour, if we went with a contract.
Well, but we know that regardless of what contract we go with, it's gonna be more, right?
It's gonna be more,
Which
So
is
that's-
why there's the budget increase
the 6.7.
of the 6.7.
Yep.
So this line item going up is representative of not only the transportation increase, but the inclusion of 2 additional sports with away games, as well as an increase in what you're seeing under usage currently based off
Correct.
of this year. Okay.
Additionally, just so you know, I will be bringing, at my next board meeting, the lacrosse presentation will be coming back to you for your decision at that point.
It's been self-funded 1 year.
It's been, they did self-funding last spring for a shortened season. They're self-funded again this year, so this would be for the next,
Okay.
following the process that self-funding has worked for the district in the past.
Any other questions on page 9? And then page 10. Any other overall questions for the LMS budget? Seeing none, I'm gonna open the floor to the budget committee questions, if there are any.
Can we spin a spin zone?
Jen, I've got a couple,
Okay?
you talked about the tables that had to be replaced.
Yes.
I wanna find who that was.
Page 1.
Page 1,
You mentioned,
737?
you mentioned some of them were broken as a part of like the whole transition.
Yep.
Is there any way to recoup any of that cost from the contractors if they were done
It
by
wasn't.
them?
It wasn't broken by them. They were broken by our staff, or for example, if you look at the tables that we're sitting at here, they're all on casters, and you'll see that casters are part of this expectation. Picture a 12-year-old saying, let's get this table moved across the room. Well, they're gonna push it, and it's gonna go stutter across the room. The legs are then gonna fold under, and it's gonna break. So, yes, it's an upfront larger cost, but the plan is for that to be able to be supported longer in the future because they're sturdier.
Okay.
We have some,
I just have a concern about it. I have a classroom with casters and we're putting cups under them because we don't want them to move. So just, I would consider,
we have tests, we have done 2 tests already, and the teachers are thrilled with them.
Okay.
As they're older, they have lofting wheels, and they're feeling like,
oh no, I have 8th graders, believe me, we're going cups. So,
so the 8th grade classroom that has them, she's had them since last February, she's loved them, it's worked beautifully, she just doesn't have a full set.
Yep.
So it's got the whiteboard surface so they can do the math on the top. And that's why there's only 2 tables for 8th grade and 2 tables for 5th grade. And then the 2 classroom sets.
I've got one more question and a comment. On page 9, the iReady printing,
Yes,
that's not the assessment, so taking the assessments online, that's the reports
correct.
that go on.
That's the reports that go home to parents. And it is most legible in color for the parents to see red, yellow, and green to where they are targeted on their bar graph. It's much easier to read in color than it is to read plain. We've tried it both ways. Parents have given better feedback to the color.
And is there any thought about that going home electronically?
That is very difficult to go home electronically because of the way the report runs. And when we get into FERPA expectations, which is the Federal Education Rights Protection Act, we have to make sure that there's a mail merge that ensures that your child's test scores are only going to you. So it's a very complicated process, the way the reports come from iReady, to be able to get that into a mail merge. I wouldn't feel secure in sending that email, although I hear what you're saying that way. We don't currently have that ability to do that in a
Just to follow up on that, could they be loaded into PowerSchool where there's parent access?
So we spent a lot of time this summer working with iReady and PowerSchool to try and get that all connected. And after days and days and days of work, it just fell through. The iReady platform, there's something about the platform that is not allowing it to talk to PowerSchool at all.
The reports don't always come out in a concise 1-2 page report. The parent reports sometimes can come out as a 6-page report if there's lots of follow-up for the parents to work on. Sometimes it comes out as 1 or 2 pages, which makes it very easy. So it's not like you could even say every 2 pages is for the next student. Sometimes he's gonna have 2 pages, she's gonna have 6, she's gonna have 1, she's gonna have 7. It's not consistent in the way the report comes through.
And then my last comment, not a question, is I think thinking about the increases in this budget, and I'm sure that they're consistent across the board, I want to just bring up the idea again, and I know it's discussed every year, about student fees. And I think, my thought around it is, just as a general comment, is I think when we're looking at the classroom supplies that fall under what I would call the core areas, your math, your ELA, your science, social studies, I think that's hard to justify that. But when we look at some of the costs that might be associated with the electives, are there opportunities for student fees to help offset some of those costs that are in the budget? It's more of a comment. You don't have to answer.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
Just,
that.
I would like to weigh in on that, because we use the term electives, but those are required at the middle school, they're not electives. And so you can't charge fees for something that's part of the educational program. So it's easy to say English, math, social studies, science is core, and the other stuff is not core, but
Not
that's
core,
really
yeah.
not the case in middle school.
And not
So-
core might be the better word instead of electives, but
Yeah.
still.
But because it's required for a
Right.
student, it's in the state minimum standards, the taxpayers need to support that. So that's not a fee area that would be something I would support or recommend to do. And I think it would be challenged and plausible.
That's it.
I just got a couple of quick ones. Going back to the porta potties,
Yes.
how many months and how many porta potties do you have?
So I believe there are 2 porta potties that go out, and I believe that they are out there from the end of March until the beginning of June or summer.
There's one.
There's one?
It's still there.
No, that's mine.
Oh, that's, I don't know where they come from, they just show up someday.
Yeah, that one you own, so you only have one?
Yep.
That's the one at the softball.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're using the same company, because I know Doug, you were at, last year when we talked about it, we got from the town. Instant portables, is that what you're using?
I think we use
We just
drop
changed-
one.
What's that?
I think we use drop one.
I think it is drop one.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Which is a great name, by the way. With a pause.
My middle school brain just told me
had
to each and every one, guys.
I drove by that in Merrimack the other day, I said, what a great name for a company.
Wow.
I know Instant Portables was just bought out, this past year, but like I get the one for GMS, once yours is gone, I get it for soccer, and I get it down at Sawmill. And I know they're gonna go up a little bit, but they held their rate for me for the, Jamboree. And when you pay for, a tournament, you're paying basically like a month, but it's $150 a month for a porta potty. So if you give them 2 months down, the rate goes up to $200, you're probably gonna talk to 400. So you might wanna find out what your vendor's charging.
Yeah. What company are you using? Did it change
Listen,
names
Instant
though?
Portables, I can give you the phone number.
Yeah,
But-
if you wanna email me a phone
Yeah,
number.
but like I said, the other day, I just ordered 4 of them, and she's holding the same rate as last year, which was $150. So I'm certain, even if there was an increase up to 200, we're talking 200 rather than 1400.
Should an
You can get them
RFP
cheaper, that's good, yeah,
Should do an RFP for porta potties,
yeah,
Drop one.
get 3 bids.
you just want to say it.
What about the boys?
And the other thing is, you may want to just double check with Tri-County, but my understanding is they're holding the same scheduling as this past year. So the traveling part will increase, it's gonna be more or less maintained, so it's a smaller transportation circle. And that was all done to save in transportation because of lack of buses, drivers, and cost. So my understanding is it's gonna be the same teams as was this year.
The same team helps, but things that don't help are things like the tournaments for volleyball, the tournaments for cross-country.
Yeah, no, I get that, but if you're concerned as far as like, you know, the soccer team and the
Yep.
lacrosse is gonna be doing something different, as far as I know, they're gonna be more or less the same schedule.
Good.
It'd probably be the same schedule, but it might be flipped. So
Right.
if that short trip to Auburn you guys did, they'll now get that, and you guys might be going up to the Seacoast.
No, because it'll be the same grouping of teams, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So, and the thing is, like the boys and girls, just similar to
Right.
high school, just
Yeah.
wanna be home, wanna be away. So what it is, they broke it down into like X amount of teams, and we just did a grouping. And they did that for transportation, we just did home and homes. Right, yeah. So you may just wanna double check, but my understanding is Tri-Town is maintaining. the same schedule.
This came straight from Dan, our AD, our athletic director. He went through and
Yeah.
I asked him specifically, game by game, tell me how many you have away, how many you have home.
Yeah, I'm not saying
Yep.
the away at home is the same, but I'm
Yep.
saying as far as the distance, so if you're like, you know, going by hours or whatever calculation you're using, it should be the
Perfect.
same as this year.
Okay.
Should be.
Should be, knock on wood.
Any other questions from the budget committee for the LMS team? Any final
you.
questions from the school board? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're gonna switch over to the high school at this point. Principal Hess is online. I think he's gonna do the presenting from there, and, but he has sitting up at the table in his place, Assistant Principal Gianpaolo. And he also brought double backup, so he's got the guidance director, I'm sorry, school counseling director, apologies, I'm full on it, and our athletic director also, so,
Say triple backup.
well.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Can you guys hear in the back? Okay, yep.
After hearing all the questions, I was gonna pretend my internet went out, but I can just go through this, so. You know, looking at the high school budget, as you go through it, we're kind of ups and downs in a lot of different areas. Overall, we're up just over $16,000. Two of the main causes of that, the high school hasn't had a furniture line in the past 4 or 5 years. I added a furniture line this year, looking to be able to do some adaptive, collaborative approach in classrooms as opposed to the attached desks and chairs. We have some athletic updates that Josh will talk about in a little bit about some areas that we don't really have any wiggle room. Overall, our regular ed programs were down just over $23,500. But then when we look at where we are seeing kind of large increases, it's in some areas that we can't really control. Our CTE tuitions are up, and that's a hard number to budget for because we don't know who's going until they're enrolled to get a real good number. We always ask interest and we get that number to kind of try, but it varies greatly from who actually attends the CTE classes. And then our VOC transportation and our athletic transportation costs are obviously going up. Our Londonderry tuition is also high. However, I think this is an area that we're going to see a huge decrease over the next few years based upon what we're doing in-house to support our students. And so I think that that's going to be an area that we'll see a huge decrease over the next few years. But most departments, you know, stayed level or close to level. We've got some small increases here and there in supplies and some asks, but overall, I think that our department heads, our curriculum facilitators did a nice job bringing in a budget. So I'll take questions.
All right, starting on page 1, are there any questions from the board?
On the movable, adaptable equipment, do you have something in mind? 10,000 seems like a nice plug, so just curious what you're thinking.
Yeah, I'm really looking to do.
Sorry, it's
I'm going to try to
737
do
on page
2
1.
classrooms. 10,000 is not a lot when you're looking at, you know, trying to change 2 classrooms. But really just looking for tables and chairs that are movable, that you could use as collaborative spaces or as single spaces. Really just trying to change some learning environments and some spaces where teachers are doing some pretty dynamic instruction, and they're held back a little bit by what is currently in their classroom. We still have some of the old desks attached to the chair, so those are difficult in some spaces. So just looking to try to upgrade a little bit at a time. I'm also looking at some grant funding to see if we can do some bigger things too. So.
All right, so 2 classrooms, got it, thank you.
Any other questions on page 1?
Does changing the furniture impact or create any sort of benefit or detriment to the custodians' work in the classrooms, given that we are having trouble staffing custodians?
I think that this change in furniture could be an improvement. They'd be easier to get under and around if you're looking at larger tables as opposed to just desks and chairs. I didn't really think about that, but that's a good way to look at it as well.
Any other questions?
Good out of the box question, like.
Page 1?
Throw a gem out there once in a while.
Nope, moving on to page 2.
Under 610 supplies, I noted that the school store has new funding this year.
Yeah, so the way that the school store has been funded in the past I inherited from my predecessor, and I have a principal's line in the student accounts. And traditionally, that would be the starter fund for the school store that would then get reimbursed if they were able to do sales. I've challenged the business teacher and the kids to change the way the school store is run and the material and merchandise that they sell. And in order to do that, they're going to need some starting fund capital for next year. I think this will probably be the only year that line is in there because the task is to then run only off your profits. You're only able to buy more when you sell. And so I think this will probably be the only year that line has to be in there, but they're going to need some startup costs to tackle the challenge that I've put in front of them.
Great.
Thank you.
Anything else on page 2? Moving to page 3. Hearing nothing, moving to page 4. Page 5.
Under 810 dues and fees, I noticed a new membership for Facts American Family.
That's new to this year?
It was a new description added to this year's budget that wasn't in last year, so I'm assuming it's new.
I'd have to double check. I didn't change the description for this year for that, so I'd have to double check that.
Can I, on 580 travel, can we, it looks like there's an increase in the budget of $300 for more travel to be able to go to food stores and department stores.
Yeah, and
or
so I've
facts?
been working with Doug and Dr. Jetty on that over the past few weeks about how we want to approach that. So that's definitely an area we're really looking at the cost for what grocery delivery would be versus the travel costs. So that's definitely an area that we can probably be flexible with. But that was just to match what was actually reimbursed for travel last year. But we have had conversations over the past few weeks about what we can do to improve that system.
Okay.
I'd like to make the general comment, Madam Chairman, on the 272 and the 580 lines, just across the budget.
Yep.
Taking all of these pages put together, those 2 lines are up about 14,000 and change.
Okay.
We were at 33,800 in 2023 actual. Our budget for 2024 is 56,000, and it's going up to 70,000 in 2025. We'll take a look at that as we get into it next week.
Okay.
What 2 lines, 580 and?
272 and 580.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions on page 5? Page 6?
Same thing on 810 NCTM membership. That $495 looks new.
Yeah, so that's another math membership where they've got a ton of free resources and free conferences that you can go once you're a member. And so our teachers were just looking at other ways to improve. their instruction in the classroom, and that's one of the things that they've requested.
Anything else on page 6? Page 7? Page 8? Page 9? Page 10? Page 11?
On 561 tuition, is that what you were referring to for Londonderry?
Yeah, no, that
That's
561,
CTE.
that's for all of our CTE tuitions.
Okay.
So, Alvern, Pinkerton, Manchester.
Okay.
Why would we level fund that from past year?
We don't have a great metric to go off of as far as predict that. We level funded a little bit because the trend seems to be in not necessarily a bad way for students to partake in CTE classes, whether it be because that's the career that they're looking to go, or that's what will kind of help them move into the college career that they want as well. So that's something that Jake and I talked about, and we're looking to find out better way to predict it, but we don't have a great way as of now.
I mean, even factoring in inflation and looking at actuals, right, for past years. I mean, you could easily fund this at $70,000 and I think you'd be covered.
Yeah, it's more looking at, the trend of students going into it too, so, but.
Just speaking as a high school parent, there does seem to be an increase in the amount of CTE students. I don't know if it's in part due to the change in programming, the increased programming, the improved facilities over there. But there does seem to be an increase in a lot of students having an interest in at least part-time. The vet program, for example, the nursing program, there are kids already that are earning their LNA as high school students because of the program, so.
I think it's a great program, it's just a matter of what's the right number for it.
Yeah,
And they're starting to take students younger, so it used to be just like juniors and seniors could go, but now they're starting to open up to sophomores as well, so that opens up a whole other pool, because they're turning into 3-year programs instead of just the 2.
Is that a choice that we can make as a town?
What do you-
Like the program, yeah, it's like the program, so
So the length of the program would go 3 years starting in sophomore year?
some of them do, yeah. I can get numbers on that if you need them.
Are we gauging interest when they're coming in as freshmen? Which obviously that can change year over year, but that's.
Yeah, I mean, we gauge interest as that comes, we gauge interest at the beginning of the year, but again, it's, once scheduling comes around in March, and then, they've got to apply to the program, it varies so much. That's just one of those hard ones to budget for 10 months in advance.
Just to remind the board too, because I presented on this last year or the year before, you're really looking at, $98,000 is a big budget line, but that's one teacher. So if you were to try to offer that quality of individualized programming for all of these students for $98,000, you couldn't do it.
Wouldn't do it, right.
You have to remember that is our tuition that leverages a lot of federal Pell Grant money that supports these programs. And so it really is relative short money in terms of what Litchfield is picking up, because you're leveraging all the other funds that are being used to support the.
But it's also the busing and there's other costs behind it.
That's true. Yep. But even, again, if you extract that busing piece out, and add that in, you really are looking at, and especially for a highly individualized program, if you talk to our CTE students, I would venture to guess that many of them will say, this is their reason
Yeah,
for
it's
being
great.
why they come to school, right?
It's a great
So
program.
we just need to keep that in mind, because to answer your question, Andrew, you could limit this. You could just say your budget is $50,000, pick the kids and stick within that budget, but we're gonna miss kids. And so, could it be done? The answer is yes. Should it be done? I would argue no. I think we should be meeting every kid where they are and putting them into that highly individualized seat.
absolutely. And I can see that kids coming in from 8th grade into 9th grade, they don't know about the program. I don't even think if you ask them, they'd have any idea what it is or what they would be interested in doing. It's really towards the end of that freshman, sophomore year that the interest grows significantly.
Yep.
Anything else on page 11? Page 12. Page 13. Page 14.
Sorry, back on page 13, the athletic trainer services, line 339.
Yeah, Josh, this is the coverage line for
Jesse.
when trainers at another game.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah. So, yeah, so like games, if he has to travel to every football game. So if we're still have a soccer game or something that's going on, we have to pay the company that we reach out to, Safe Sports. We have to pay them $40 an hour for a substitute trainer to come.
But how were we doing that in past years? We were just absorbing
The
the
trainer
costs.
we had prior said we were good, and it got a little sketchy at times. So, and then last year, when we got this new trainer, he's like, I talked to him like, my thought is we should be covered every game. He's like, yes, so we've paid that out of, this $5,500 you're gonna see, everything's been coming out of my fundraising account. So the golf tournament, the ticket sales,
Yeah.
stuff like that, so that's kind of where the 55, I think it's 56, the 5,600 this year is just so I'm not taking that out of tickets and coverage for stuff like that. So the other 3,800 on that is to pay game workers and people that are doing run the clock. The last couple of years, every basketball, football game, anyone working that game has come out of my fundraising account. So trying to remove that from fundraising and kind of get a line into the budget where we're actually paying people a legitimate budget line. And that's gonna work for the whole 56.
Any other questions on 13? 14?
On 14, I noted that it's where it says 135 games at the very bottom of that big
Yeah,
block. In current year, we had that budgeted at $750, and it seems to have gone up from $750 to over $4,000. Just curious why there's a large spike there.
I don't even know, did we have this before?
We had,
Was it in prior budgets?
yeah,
Because we definitely added, that's us going back, that's having game workers, I mean, homecoming, we had 15 people working, prior years, it just comes out of my fundraising account. So it's 15 at $30. We had all the basketball officials, not officials, but the game workers, scorekeeper, announcer, there's three people working in every football game. And then games that I can't make, or for example, there's a playoff game, I gotta go to the playoff game, we have no one watching another playoff game here, so it's kind of just covering ourselves on that basis. So we have big soccer games, it's a lot easier if someone is, I don't wanna say on the ground, but towards the field and by the fans, or in between two opposing teams, and then someone up in the press box, too, just to kind of have more eyes out there instead of having one person per seat.
yeah, I'm looking at game manager, $750.
Yeah, we blew through that $750 by homecoming. So, just to kind of take it out of fundraising, because we usually, the tickets or the golf tournament, we would take a lot of that money out of my fundraising account and pay for the people. Just because I think the coverage is a lot more important than kind of saying what's going in. Hopefully no one's there who does anything wrong.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions on 14? 15? 16? 17? 18? 19?
On 19, there's a, at the very top, I guess it's under, yeah, it's under 644, information access fees. There's a Naviance program for $2,200, and it's a 3-year renewal. That was also included in our current year, so is that an annual price, or is that the price that we paid for 3 years?
I'll have to, I brought this up with Doug in our original meeting, so I'll have to touch base with him again about that line. So I'll make a note of that and we'll clarify that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on 19? 20? 21?
So on 20, sorry, under 644, also information access fees. The description and the dollars are the exact same as fiscal year 24. So again, just curious, same question really, right? Is this annual or is this like a contract that we're now in because we funded it for current year and it's continuing through future years?
No, those are the annual fees for all of those databases and research things that the library uses.
Okay.
Anything else on 20? 21? $22?
On 22, I noted the 2 new TI-84, I'm assuming they're calculators. I thought calculators were student supplied. Just curious why they're in the budget.
There are some loaners in the library for students
Yeah,
that cannot
that's what
afford.
they're for.
Okay.
Anything else on 22?
The principals conference, is that really the same as we've talked about already this evening?
Yes, absolutely. That the law conference in the summer. That's if you missed that, I mean, they talked about legislation that was passed the week of the conference. It's just the most up to date, so that we can approach and start the school year, legally.
Legally informed.
Yeah.
Anything else on 22? 23? 24?
Community graduate signs.
Yeah, so I had a request from the Booster Club. In the past, they have bought the great graduation signs that we have at graduation, and that's a huge fundraiser thing for them at the end of the year with everything else that they do. So, I asked them to do some research and find out how well those signs are received by the community, and they came back with overwhelming feedback that families love those. And they asked if that was something that the school could put into their graduation budget. So that's a thing that the school would provide every single year for graduates. And I said, I'll ask, absolutely. If it's something the community is saying that they really appreciate and want, I'll see what we can do.
Okay, thank you.
At one point, this is just sort of a general question on graduation. There was some discussion about with the rain having to move it inside last year, whether or not, I don't even know what it's called anymore. I still call it the Verizon Wireless Center, but I think it's Snooze Center. Yeah. Is that something we've considered or looked at, or is the feeling that we want to keep graduation more local to the town? And if so, what are the fees for that? If that would be something.
Are you asking me?
I'm just asking in general if we've thought about that. I don't even know that people in town would like that, to be perfectly honest. I think there's a small town feel and people may want that, but with it having to move inside last year, it was a comment.
That would be a change to a Campbell tradition that I don't know if.
Those aren't allowed, right?
No,
I'm putting it out there for thought. I don't see any reason or cost here, but maybe the cost in terms of the chair rental, the ramp rental, all of those things may be similar, and it could be worth investigating if it's something people are interested in, or maybe they're not. That's fine. Any other questions on 24? 25? 26?
Wait, on 25, for the vocational transport, so that correlates to the
CTE.
CTE. Is this a proportionate increase to the amount that we've increased the budget for CTE?
No, because all the students fit on the bus, so they take a large bus over. So
Gotcha.
we won't need more than that one transport over, one transport back type of thing, so.
Do they go to 3 different schools? Is that what you're
No,
saying?
well, CTE is what we provide through this is Hudson CTE, right? And
Thank you.
25, anything else? 26? And 27? Any general questions from the board? Any questions for the budget committee?
Some travels, huh?
No, Josh will probably answer this for me. Because I thought we discussed this last year, at least to go to the town as far as the ropes course, since it's on their property and it's theirs, that they would pay for the inspection.
So we've had several conversations with the town, which is great, because, and part of it was just kind of going back for the history of the ropes course. So, kind of learned that the ropes course came from a grant that was supposed to provide money for your non-traditional sports. And then, was built on town land, but really a passion project of the then high school PE teacher, Coach K. And so what has been going on is we've been paying the inspection, and Coach K and another individual after the inspection have been fixing it free of charge. But we've revamped some things going forward with the addition of a full-time PE teacher. A question that was asked of the PE teacher was, would you like to do ropes? And the answer from this person was yes, because the conflict we have is the ropes course to replace. If we started from scratch, would be about 60 or 70,000. So do we as a community really want to take down the $60,000-$70,000 apparatus that? So we're still in talks with the town to kind of see what makes sense for payments of things. And they do maintenance of it as well. So they're doing some ground maintenance, which is gonna take them some time to do also. So there is a cost sharing aspect of it, and I think that cost sharing aspect would change the more that the town has groups come in and pay to use the course as well. So right now, they don't have groups come in and pay to use the course, so they don't have any funding for the course itself. But I think one of their goals is to offer some, proper insurance from the group that's coming in, pay the town money, and therefore take some of that proportion of the money to help out with the expenses. But they don't have revenue coming in now.
And then that's my next question, because I brought up last year that I happened to be at the ropes course, and there was a bus there with a group of people who came in, not from our school. So, and it's a question I'll ask the town, because it's a liability issue as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we're paying for inspection, and they talk about that they don't have any revenue, yet there are other towns using it.
Yeah, that's a big problem.
So not so much other towns, but private groups, I think we're using. I don't think it was like schools from other towns.
I'm not sure, it was a yellow school bus, that's all I know.
Oh,
It
was
there.
it? Okay, yeah.
And then there were a whole bunch of.
My understanding, it was private groups from throughout the area that were using it. It has been communicated more from the town, because it's their land, to those groups that's not okay, without talking to the town first, following through with their expectations as far as insurance coverage, as well as paying for it as well. So, but right now, the ropes course is somewhat shut down because the town wants to do some work on the land part of the course. It did pass inspection with some things that needed to get fixed on the ropes part of the course, which is being fixed at, right around now. And we might see some people out on it next week, and that will be the people who installed the course. They're back in the area because Salem has a brand new course.
I'll double check with the town, because like I mentioned last year, there was a school bus, and it was during school. So it might have been another group, but I'm assuming it's another
Okay,
group of students from somewhere.
Are there signs that are posted for, not for unauthorized use or anything like? Because I mean, obviously, I think that is a big concern especially if the district is doing anything
So,
involved.
When we talked with the town, we agreed on some things being town kind of control and some things being our control. What was definitely agreed on town control was that they have to have an understanding of who's on their property and make sure the correct signage is there. So I don't know those follow-up answers. We're walking the course with rec next week, with the company that inspects it, and with the company, the same company that does the training next week too. So it's an ongoing dialogue with the county.
Thank you.
Ryan, did you have a question?
No,
Any
that's
other
it.
I have a question about the SAT cost. It's on kind of top of page 18. Josh, or Jake, sorry. It's the cost of the school aid testing for juniors, the essay, $14 each for $1,250. I thought I read somewhere where this state says it's at no cost to student, but does that simply mean it's an unfunded mandate by the state, and the state is not providing money for that, and they expect that local cost to come out of school dollars?
That's a wonderful question.
Because the state, if you read what the state says, it says it's to be provided to every junior at no cost.
That's correct. So I think we're
It's the writing
confusing
portion.
that, go ahead, Mary, 'cause you
It's
got
the
it.
writing portion.
Yeah, it's,
So we offer the writing portion, which is the only portion that is offered as an add-on. It's a very important part.
that's the essay part, right?
The essay part, yes.
I mean, it's, I'm looking at, I can send you a link, Mary. It says the SAT with essay covers ELA and math and will be at no cost for every 11th grade student required to take the assessment.
That may be a change because up in, I know it's been a cost.
Okay.
It has been a cost every year, and we've offered to allow our students to do the essay portion because we felt it was important.
And that was why I was at, I had heard that before at some meeting that the state paid for it, and so I just wanted to.
Yeah, that has not been paid for traditionally, that add-on of writing portion is not that. We'll have to look into see whether or not that has changed for this year.
Katie, can you maybe send that
Yeah.
link to Mary? so we have it?
Yeah.
I'll do that, yeah, that's second. And then my other comment, circling back to, my fees comment on LMS. I do think, I know fees is not a popular topic, and I understand your logic about, the courses at LMS not necessarily being electives. I think when we're looking at the CTE courses at the high school, those are electives that kids are choosing. And where are opportunities to recoup some of that cost? Like if, in my rough math, and I may be off on this, you know, let's call it close to $2,000 per kid for them to take a CTE course based on the money that's there and the number of kids that are taking it. Could there be a fee of 5-10% for students that want to take those courses? And let me be clear, I'm a former CTE teacher. I want every kid to have the opportunity to take those courses because I believe strongly in that program. So I don't want a fee to become a barrier for a kid to take that program. And there may have to be mechanisms put in place for kids that can't afford that. I understand that. But where we have opportunities to recoup some of those costs in places in these elective type courses, I think it's worth the conversation.
And I'm gonna answer, so I answered earlier for the middle school, where I think, part of the middle school program involves all of the courses.
And that made
that are
sense.
offered.
I agree with you.
Now I'm gonna answer from the high school angle. So we require 24 credits for graduation. And so charging fees for credits that are required as part of our programming, I do think we get into a little bit of gray area and a little bit of a problem. And so students who are personalizing with the CTE courses, and remember, if you take that student back and try to offer that same seat in the school, it's gonna cost you more money than the 2,000. So I just think we have to be really careful at looking at, so again, what is an extra, right? I do think there are fee opportunities that we should have a dialogue about. I mean, should we be charging an athletic fee? That's not a core part of the program. It's a value that our community certainly holds very high, but that's not educational in terms of the, the expectations. Students are not doing that to graduate or to accumulate credits. So when we're talking about those expectations, I think that's something we just want to be mindful of as we go
And
forward.
I think that's a good dialogue to have, and I agree with you, where there's opportunities where it's not a part of their educational requirement, and making sure we're not excluding kids from being a part of anything they want to be a part of. I think that's important.
And I think CTE, we can't look at that as an add-on for kids. For a lot of kids, that is their graduation path. and their graduation requirements, so I think that's gonna get us into a tough situation.
So I actually have a question relative to that. If CTE is becoming a 3-year program, how does that affect our graduation requirements for our students, and are we gonna require additional services to meet credits?
They receive credit, I'm sorry.
So I think we would so when you look at the core requirements, I'm gonna use rough numbers, it's gonna add up to roughly 15, you're kind of state mandated, and then you're gonna have the personalization ones, which are to get you from the 15 to the 24. So I think some students will just be opting for 6, because that'll be 2 credits a year times 3 years, and that's how they're gonna work on that. So it allows them to personalize that program kind of around that core program. They do it now, they'll take, other courses that are offered at the high school. If you're an art student, you take a whole series of art courses, and a student may have 6 or more credits in art that they accumulate, because that's where their passion is and how they want to accumulate those credits.
And at least for the programs at Melbourne, a lot of the third year that they're adding to those programs has something to do with like finance or marketing within that field. So it's not necessarily like a required third year, but they're trying to create options where the kids will get that experience within that niche, but also be able to apply it to other areas.
So then my second question is, do we have any, or have we explored the opportunity to partner with tutor.com? So is that in our budget at all?
It's not in our budget because it's a free service right
Okay,
now.
so, all right,
But we are aligned to tutor.com,
Okay.
we have a partnership.
right, I know the
with them.
state's currently paying for it, but just wanna make sure that it's in there, because it's been an incredible resource for my kids, so I'm glad to hear that
Yeah,
it's within
no,
there.
we signed an agreement with them last year.
When does that state contract run through?
We haven't heard yet. I don't know off the top of my head, I have it in my.
And I mean, not just for like help, but like sending essays and papers to for critiquing, it's been incredible, so I'm glad to hear that it's.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely been something that we partnered with them last year, and we've continued that partnership, and we've been trying to promote it more and more.
We have teachers required, just so you know. Like, they have to submit the paper to tutor.com to get feedback.
I'm not sure. I'm not, that gets into a little bit of a gray area with us, so I'm not sure we can do
It is a great resource,
that, but it is a great resource, and we do encourage it.
Those are all my questions, thanks.
Any other questions from budget committee members? Last chance for the board, any other questions on the CHS budget? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Hess.
Just to go back, I was able to check my notes, and the question on the textbook replacement, that was a notes error, not a math error, so it should be 50 times 10, 200 times 10, so the numbers are correct. You can go up.
Okay, thank you.
You want to keep that seat at the end of it? Feel good?
You can sit next to Tiny Jake. Tiny Jake.
So while she gets situated, Holly's gonna walk us through
Watch
the
the clock.
personnel portion of the budget. And this is where there is a lot of activity. And so, we'll take our time, make sure you understand exactly what it is that we're looking for. Relative to this. You bring in friends and
Just me.
you
And all. Thank you. All right, here we go. Salary and benefits budget. So our salary and benefits budget is comprised of all personnel that work for the district, salaries and benefits. I have lots of pages to go through here, so I'm gonna keep my overview as short as I can. Starting with salaries, as you go through the budget, you're not gonna see increases for teachers for next year. We're currently in negotiations, so hopefully we have a warrant article that goes through on the ballot in March and passes, and then that would be the increases for teachers. If there's different increases or decreases currently on the lines, that would probably be based off attrition and staff turnover. The support staff, we are in our second year of our contract at an estimated 3% cost for support staff. Support staff consist of our paraprofessionals, admin assistants, monitors, custodians, and food service. Our non-union staff, which is our administration, our SAU staff, anyone that's not covered by any of our collective bargaining agreements, tutors, psychologists, mental health clinicians. This year, you're gonna see a 3% salary pool. It's broken up into two parts, one for administration and one for support personnel. Along with that, you'll also see a 2% bonus pool. They're all lines at the very end of the budget, and we can go through those as we go. Starting last year under co-curricular, instead of listing out each position, I just lumped the amounts, put totals for each salaries and benefits for co-curriculars under the teacher's contract, for the clubs, activities, athletics. If anyone want a breakdown of those, I can get you a breakdown of all the positions I have on our website, the list of them, and then I also have a spreadsheet that breaks it out as well. Also including salaries, you'll see salaries for substitutes. We are always looking for sub-teachers, paras, monitors, custodians. There is a little bit of an increase to that line as the past 2 years, we've really had trouble hiring staff in all areas, but subs as well. So we had put in 2 years ago after the pandemic, a building sub at each building. $1 an hour higher than our sub teachers right now. They come in every day, they get 5 holidays, just a little something extra. So last year we didn't have that broken out under each subline at the school. I wanted to really break it out this year to emphasize that we do have those positions. I also added an additional $1 in there for them to bring them up to $17.50. Since we've started them, I think midway last year we increased their rate to $16.50, but they haven't gotten anything since then. So I wanted to make sure we did something for them. Long-term subs, I didn't put a change to that. That's a really hard one to budget for. Long-term sub means after 21 days, if you have a teacher out, say maternity leave, a medical leave, something like that, by the state we're required to have a certified teacher in there after 21 days. So because you're looking for a certified teacher, you definitely need to pay them more money. We base that as a daily rate, based off the teacher's contract, bachelor step 1 of the teacher's contract, so it's budgeted. I just kept it the same last year. That could go all over the place. It could be really low one year, it could be really high one year. It all just depends on what we have going on.
Currently hiring several people.
Yes,
Anybody?
hiring lots of positions for anyone that would like to come work for us. It's a great place. All right, severance. So severance, you're going to see budgeted a little bit different this year. So in FY24, we had a total of $178,756 for staff for severance payments. Severance payments are spelled out on how it's calculated in administrator and in the teacher contract. This fluctuates every year. By November 1st, staff have to come to me and say, yes, I may retire at the end of the year. And it's an intent to retire. So they may not retire at the end of the year, and then we have that money in there. So I know last year the town approved, or this past March, a warrant article for that severance and benefits changes. So the way you see it budgeted this year is so last year I had severance payments for 4 staff. This year there's severance payments for 6 staff, 4 of the same staff, and 2 new staff.
Thank you.
You're welcome. For a total new money, so just looking at this year, $231,004. What I did, because at this point in time, that severance is paid out to staff, so like anyone that told me they were leaving at the end of the last school year would have been paid out on July 1. None of those 4 staff have left, so that money, we believe, should be moved to that. Well, we would put the warrant article and ask for the money to be moved to that fund. So we only budgeted the difference this year. So as we go through, you'll see that's much less than it used to be because of that reserve fund. So it's only, a difference of $52,240 in the budget. So it's the 2 new staff and then the difference of the 4 old staff. So the 4 that were budgeted, I shouldn't say old,
Well,
in the last budget, because the severance is based off of salary, years of service, and sick time. So your salary's gonna go up a little bit, your year of service is gonna increase, and people could have more or less sick time. So there's a little bit of increase for each of those. And those are also estimates, because say if these teachers do retire, we do get a collective bargaining agreement. Actually, never mind, you're looking at current year salary, ignore that one, sorry. Thinking collective bargaining.
Holly, can we just, because this is a really key point, I wanna make sure that.
Yeah, sorry.
We might wanna take questions on that.
Okay,
idea
we can do
and
that.
Where we are, because it's multi-year planning and moving. Just wanna make sure we're clear on it.
But now that it's November 2nd, we have an understanding of what to budget for next year, beginning in July when these severance payments are made. So we feel pretty confident in these numbers.
Yes.
We feel very confident because
Yep.
the deadline has passed.
Yep,
Yes.
but there's no new severances can come in at this point. If someone, so one of the severances out of the 2 new ones was a staff member that left at the end of the last school year. Because they didn't tell me by the November 1 deadline of last year, hey, I'm leaving at the end of the year, they don't get paid
Until the following.
exactly.
Yep.
Yep, so these are the numbers.
Okay.
Yep. And they could go down because something could be happen, they could lose
Yeah.
sick days, yeah, absolutely. So when I look at budgeting
Okay.
these, I have a spreadsheet for each person, calculating their severance, retirement costs for the district, taxes, etc. And I do it as I'm preparing the budget, so it could be a little less.
So that pool of money that you have in the current budget that's gonna carry over, we should expect a transfer into the employee benefits reserve fund to cover that.
So the transfer would come from a warrant article, because it's going into a trust fund, but we know the amount of that
Yes.
right now. That amount would be $178,756.
So we've already earmarked that.
Yeah, that money is not being spent.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for that.
And-
Welcome.
Thank you.
And it'll be really important that the budget committee and the board just keep in mind that dollar amount, it was to raise it once and not to be re-raising it.
Yeah.
So we really should have unanimous votes to put that money to park it, right? We've already raised it, we should unanimously agree to park it, let the taxpayers know.
100%.
Because communicating this will be a little bit complicated, but we need to understand it. And frankly, 5-0 or 9-0 votes will say a lot about what needs to be done and why it's smart planning and budgeting. So that's why I wanted to just pause for a second
Yeah.
on this, because it's
Big
a
change.
moving piece, but
Yep.
boy, it's gonna be really a benefit for the town down the road.
so are there any questions from the board on this moving piece? Are there any questions from budget committee in the back on this piece?
Not at all. I think somebody had a fantastic idea.
Carrie's in favor of it.
All
That's
right.
good.
Thank
All right.
you,
Carrie
Carrie.
approved. Continue.
All right. All right, so we talked about severance. As you go through the budget, a lot of this is on the first page where you see contracted expenses that are under either administrator contracts or the teacher's contracts. Things such as there's cost for the district of teachers if we're asking them to teach an additional class. That's what 6th block is. You have grade changes. We allow teachers twice a year. If they move on this, they can move on the salary schedule for an increase in schooling, such as bachelor's to bachelor's 15 credits, master's to master's 15, etc. Paraprofessionals, their pay scale is based off of whether they get certified, they can get para-certification through the state, that will move them over a little bit as well. Administrator vacation buyback and longevity, again underneath contracts. Prescription reimbursement is $5,000, where the district puts a pool of money for prescription reimbursement. Let's see, vacation buyback, right. That's a lot of the salary stuff. Benefits, fun. Alright, so health reimbursement account I just mentioned, health buyout, so, I broke that out into two separate parts, the teachers union and the non-union. There is a buyout for staff that do not pick up our health insurance currently. So that cost is what we're actually paying right now out for staff.
49,000?
For total, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, no, no.
That's a hell of a buyout.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, sorry.
All right.
Didn't mean to give you a heart attack. No, they're.
I'm gonna come work for Litchfield.
Please come work for Litchfield. No, teachers are 1,500 and non-unions between 1,000 and 2,000. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Making sure you're still awake.
Yeah, now I am.
Okay. Health insurance. Thanks, Doug. Increase estimate. We put in an increase of 10%. We use School Care as our third-party provider, which gives us Cigna plans. I just went to their annual meeting last week. We should have rates. They hope to get us actual rates by the end of next week. Then Doug and I will probably give you guys updated budgets, because right now we've budgeted the amount, just 10% off the cost of health insurance at the bottom of the budget, and like we did last year, we'll move it to each of those lines. I'm thinking we're gonna come in under that. They said the average group was 9.7, but I'm not sure. I think we're doing better than some other places that use Health Trust, which is Anthem plans. I've heard them having anywhere from 15 to 25% increases for insurance, so I'm hoping
Pay
ours
for that data breach.
come in pretty good. When you also look at health insurance, and I'll explain this more when we get actual rates in there. So for the past, not this year, but prior years, we've had a really big reimbursement that comes back to us. It's been anywhere from $100,000 to $250,000. They credit it on our July bill. We use that instead of sending a check to all employees. We use that to offset the rates. We did not do this year. We have budgeted the actual rates, and we're gonna budget the actual increase because our health reimbursement fund on July 1 was only about 20,000 this year. So I feel like we need to go back to actuals, and then we'll take the work to do the checks to give people their $5 back. Just because you're going forward charging people health insurance, but you're giving a reimbursement backwards. It just doesn't seem logical to me. So more info to come on rates. Hopefully we come in nice and low. Dental increase, we did get those rates. We're increased 4.7%. That's the highest I've seen it since I've been here. We've been at 0. A lot of times we've been at 3. Luckily, dental plans are pretty cheap, so it's only gonna give us a cost increase of $7,474. Life and disability, 2 years ago, I moved us from Reliance to Mutual of Omaha. They locked in our rates. We're looking at probably a rate increase. They told me to just budget 10%. Unfortunately, those are rates that I will not get updated rates for till June, because they're gonna look for censuses with actual data and salary and birth date and all that fun stuff. So I kept the 10 in there, and we're looking at about $4,400. New Hampshire retirement, we do not have a change in rates this year. When they do their rates, they lock them in for 2 years, so our rates changed last year, so those will stay the same for now. You'll obviously always see increases in taxes, disability, again, those are salary-based calculations, so you will see those. I have a spreadsheet I've attached on here for attrition. If you can't get into it, definitely let me know. I know we all look at attrition numbers every year. I have that are hires. Now this year, we have a lot of vacant positions along with the last year, so you're looking at person to person. Someone left, this person replaced them. With that, we have roughly a savings of $180,591.
That's in the current budget.
Yes. Yep.
So Currently, in the current budget, the school board took away $150,000 for attrition for this year, so $150,000.
Yeah.
And then this would be that $180,000, so it was close to that number that school board took out from the budget.
Okay.
So just tracking those, tracking the different costs and salaries and benefits as we go through that.
But that's not including anything to do with vacant positions.
Correct.
Yeah, that's specifically,
Just, yes.
okay,
Mm-hmm.
right.
Next, we are gonna get into positions.
Ready to go? Okay, so I'm gonna kind of intro this for the board. This goes back to, again, where we said the August meeting where you said, tell us what you need. And as a leadership group, we kind of talked about it and we said, basically, if we don't say it, then it never is part of the conversation. And so I can speak for all of us when we say that what we're giving to you is requests, but for your consideration as well. We want to enter into a conversation with you about what the needs are. Some of them are more vital than others. Some of them are actually, I'll say, required. And so we just want to break those down a little bit for you. And I will say that if, oh, they're not showing the slide, but the first 5 that were on the slide do have to do with GMS. So I'm going to be referencing the slide. So the first one is the teacher at grade 1. That goes back to, and actually, oh, can you go back to slide?
Mike's
Who's
doing it.
controlling?
Oh, it's me, and I think this is aligned with it, but you want me on the slide?
If you just go to the slide.
Go to the slide.
Only because the teacher kindergarten and the teacher grade 1 are coupled kind of together. One of those already exists because, again, it was approved in August, it's just not in the budget. The other one, we are proposing based on, we're projecting that we're gonna have the numbers that will meet the threshold based on the school board guideline that we'd hit the trigger number, and then we require that 5th teacher. So one of those people is already in the building, another one would be a hire to meet the thresholds of the class size. The mental health clinician, school counselor at GMS. The other 2 schools already have a mental health clinician. This would bring us into parity with those other 2 schools. We have done it as a slash position only because we believe it would widen the pool. It would also help better meet the needs at GMS. We need to find relief for Mrs. Hayes, who is the sole school counselor at GMS. We do have the school social worker. There is a differentiation. School social worker is doing more of the wraparound services, but the intent, the meeting with students one-to-one, as well as running those, what we call the tier 1, so the whole class instruction, that is falling all on Mrs. Hayes. So we're looking to bring us into better parity with the other 2 schools by adding that mental health clinician, school counselor to GMS. It would kind of complete and it would provide close to the same level of services at all 3 schools, GMS, LMS, and CHS. I'll go, actually, the transfer 10% of social worker, again, that person already exists. That is really just a salary correction because part of our salary right now is out of a grant fund, and we need to transfer it over to a budget.
So that grant, it's the ESSER grant, right?
It's
And
the
that
ESSER grant.
ends on
Fiscal
September,
September 30th of 24.
and 10% of our salary is currently funded under that ESSER grant. So we're looking to move that into the budget so we keep that position at 100%.
And then the final position that would be GMS specific is the teacher, which is SPED GMS, which would be an additional case manager. And I have to go back a year. So last year, our student population required us to create a second specialized program. So we had one specialized program. And the licensing for those specialized programs have 2 restrictions. 1, you can only have an age range of 4 years. And 2, the program maxes out at 12. And we ended up with a student population that required that specialized program that had an age range of 5, and we had a student population of 17. And so it triggered that we had to create a second specialized program. So we did. And how we did that was we actually staffed it with one of our, we'll call them standard case managers, special ed case managers. So we pulled them out of the kind of, out of that pool to staff that specialized program. So now we've been operating our special ed population non-specialized, where we had been doing it with 4 case managers. This year we've been doing it with 3 case managers. So basically, what we were forced to do last year, we're trying to, I don't want to say correct, but make up for that in this year and bring us back to our, what we would consider our status quo operational level when it comes to specialized education, special education, with the addition of that specialized program, which again, we have been running, we are running, but at the cost of our standard special education. So if you can look here, last year at this time, there would have been 4 yellow names and 1 pink. We were forced to create 2 pinks, and how we did that was we took one of the yellows and made the pink. What we're asking to do is bring us back to the operational level of having the 4 yellows, which would be your standard special education. Again, it's a need, these are all needs, but we want to enter into the conversation, so I give them to you for your consideration as we move forward in the budget process.
And Dan, to clarify, you need 2 pinks because?
We need 2 pinks, oh sorry, going forward, we will be within the 4 ages. However, we're still gonna be on the 12, which is the max program. Next year, we're gonna be at 16, so we still need 2 specialized programs. Thank you.
And so you'll see in the current budget, on the slide that we were looking at, the ones we're talking about now were added directly into this budget that's in front of you. How we look to fund the special education teacher is reduce one from the high school and move it to the elementary school. So you will see those changes in the budget that you have.
The slide with the dollars, or the Excel with the dollars, can you send that to the board?
Yeah, absolutely.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It's LinkedIn, yep, and you should be able to get to it, but I'll send.
Okay.
They're all linked in the presentation.
Yeah.
Alright.
Thank you.
Which I thought I had, but I'll make sure you get it.
I can.
We don't have the presentation.
Oh,
So
well,
that
that would be why.
She just wants some lacrosse coaches.
moves up to LMS.
Follow that, Jen.
Just a boys and girls lacrosse coach, if that is something to move out of the self-funded, which was self-funded in fiscal year 23 and will be self-funded this year in fiscal year 24. We had amazing participation on lacrosse teams last year. The kids who participated and increased our overall sports. I think we had something like 300, I think we had almost 312 kids overall between track, boys and girls lacrosse, boys and girls baseball and softball. It was amazing to see the participation across the board. So we would ask to add that as an important piece, and it's a relatively small ask.
So next on this chart, so we have our Student Services Director, Sophia Fowler, and our IT Director, Chris Jamrog. These are district-wide positions. I'm just gonna briefly cover it tonight, and then when they present on Tuesday, they can go a little bit more in depth. But we have the teacher for ELL. Do you wanna talk about that and hit the slideshow later, or I can do it tonight?
I can talk about it.
Do you want her to come up here, or does it matter?
It might be helpful with the microphone. I don't know if we can hear.
Sure.
Oh.
Oh.
We can move it back there. Portable.
So the ELL teacher, last year we had proposed to reduce it down to 70%. The information that we had been given through much discussion led us to believe that that position, being at 70%, we would be able to meet all of the student need. What happened this year when we hired the teacher at 70%, we came in and actually learned that instead of the few students that we had, it tripled. And the knowledge of that between students that need to be monitored, what the monitoring actually looks like, as well as in the monitoring process, those students still have to be tested. In that monitoring process, that there's also the collaboration with teachers. So the current ELL teacher did up this beautiful presentation, which I'll kind of walk you through. So every single student is given a home language survey. That copy of the home language survey is supposed to be hard copy in a cumulative folder. That was something that was discovered this year that was not happening, and that is very quickly being rectified for this year. Once you fill out the home language survey, the home uses English in combination with any other language or English is not used, then we have to take the WIDA screener and the assessment. From the WIDA screener intake assessment, you're given a score, and that score determines the number of instructional hours you need to have as an EL student. So such as the period of time, what's noted in the box below is the period of time that is established in each school as that instructional time. It's very hard to make it unilateral across all 3 schools because the periods are different across all 3 schools. So GMS, we're saying roughly it's about 30 minutes for each instructional period, but at LMS it bumps up to 52, and at CHS it bumps up to 83. So a period is actually that whole time frame. So if you were looking at a student that required 2 periods of ELE instruction per day at the high school, that's 160 minutes of instruction per day. That's a lot of instruction. So we've done our very best to try to pull it all together. Go ahead to the next slide.
Sophia, and also it's just to add on that, it's not because we feel like we want to, this is part of law that we're required to provide that to our students.
So the next slide. So currently we actually have 34 students identified as EL students in the district. Not all of them require the amount of intensity of 2 units per day of EL instruction, so it does go down depending on what they score. So currently the number of students receiving the recommended amount in the school district is 1, based on 70%. Go to the next slide. So this is currently what her schedule is. I redacted any student-specific information. So what this goes to show is that the students outlined in the blue are missing 2.25 hours a week of instruction. In green, it's 1.5. In the yellow, it's an hour. In the purple, they're missing 3.5 hours a week. I think I wanted to note that there were 4 students in that color when I was redacting the information. And then that 1 student that's actually receiving the correct number. That's based on 30-minute periods for all 3 schools, and ideally there should be multiple students in each group. Going forward, we're looking at trying to group them together so that when, however, it's to note that the grade levels are next to them. So when you see like GMS 2 or GMS 3, like that's the grade level they're in. So it may only be 1 student in 3rd grade and 1 student or 2 students in 2nd grade. So we're trying to move forward by putting like the 2 2nd grade students in the same class, because the time frames that you could take them or push in to provide services to them could be at the same time. Currently, they could be in 2 different classes. And then the number of English learners who receive services. So there are 4 students who have scored a 1.0 to 2.9. The access test is the test that they take every year. That's just the name of it. Those students receive the highest amount of services. There are 13 students who have scored a 3.0 to 4.4. So the 4 students who receive the 1.0, these students should receive 2 periods of ELE instruction a day. And then the 13 students should receive only 1. Go ahead to the next slide.
Why are you using the word should?
Should, because we're not meeting
They're
it.
not getting it right now.
Not meeting it. So there are 4 students on monitor status. Monitor status means they have to be monitored for 4 years to make sure that they're not losing any skill. Once they've been monitored for 4 years, they can be exited off the system. So the only way to be exited is to receive a score of 4.5 or higher on the state access test. Monitored students, teachers should be receiving a form to fill out quarterly to ensure the student's continued academic progress and comprehension of English. There are 6 students who currently, their families opt out of services. So they have the right to opt out of ELE services. They don't have to take it even if their student qualifies. Opt-out students do not receive anything. They are still required to take the access test, so back to that 34 number. So even though these parents say that they don't want their students to have the service, they still have to budget the time to take the test. And they can change their mind and ask for services at any given point in time. So intake testing, the number of new students who qualify for ELE services is 4, and the number of students at the time of this that still needed to be evaluated were 3. So last year, we had actually quite a few students move in at that. I think we have a preschooler this year and a couple of other students that moved in mainly at GMS that needed services. So her schedule starts at the high school. If you go back to the slot number 4, her schedule starts at the high school currently. And then she goes to LMS. GMS, she checks on the Google Classrooms on those opposite days where it says Google Classroom. She has a prep period and a lunch period, and then she's at GMS. Her administration is more the making sure that she's got her test materials ordered, making sure that things are getting printed and into folders. There's also the administration of, there is supposed to be a report card on their progress, which actually has to be made, and they should be receiving grades on their accomplishment in their English language acquisition.
And I can also point out that she's transporting a grade 1 student back to the class, and I'm gonna pick up a grade 2 student, so that 15 minutes dwindles pretty quickly.
So we're working very hard, and it's coming along absolutely beautifully. Kara is absolutely phenomenal. She came to us with quite a lot of experience, has embraced what she encountered, as well as we tried very hard to provide a lot of training over the summer to the principals. We've aligned her with a mentor within the state so that she's aware of the state requirements. As I learned more about the state requirements and what we have to do, it's very eye-opening. It was not a piece that I knew a lot about when I started, but I'm trying really hard to get on board real quick. So the request is to put that back to a full-time position and not.
Is one full-time position enough to service all those students to the extent that they need to be serviced?
I would question that.
I think we can do definitely a better job of grouping the students together, and I think
Yeah.
it's more natural sometimes to learn in a group of 2
Right,
or 3
right.
than it is one-on-one with a teacher too, even though it might seem like it's great to be one-on-one with a teacher.
Yeah.
You have the language from the other kids too, that's
Absolutely,
definitely
yeah.
beneficial.
And I think part of this too is that in the presentation that we were provided with over the summer, that this is a civil right. So this falls under those laws of, we don't want to be part of civil rights action lawsuits. Like, there's a whole website, Mike was able to land on it, of area schools that are really involved in this, those civil rights lawsuits, and it is not pretty to read. And I think we're in a good position though, because there are some schools that don't even have an EL teacher at all. We're really lucky to have one, and as talented as she is, but there are some school districts that don't. So.
Thank you.
So next up, we'll have Chris. I'll put your organizer up here, but we'll talk about the IT technician.
Yeah, so if you look at, I have this chart here that shows our cohort versus where we're at for staffing wise. If you're looking at the dark blue, that's a digital learning specialist. If you're looking at the light blue, that's an IT technician. The medium blue is like a network admin, a sysadmin, a data admin, and then the yellow is the director. As you can see, we are lower than anybody else in our cohort. And because of that, we're basically on damage control. We are at status quo, and if you scroll down a little bit farther, you can see the devices and hardwares that basically myself and the tech handle, because if a server goes down, our database administrator isn't going to go do it, or our digital learning specialist isn't going to fix the Wi-Fi. That comes down to me and the tech. So it's really mostly, when it comes to the devices and hardware, there's just the two of us managing all those things that you see over there. Last year alone, I put in for almost $17,000 worth of outside work to come in to help maintain or upgrade. Being here for almost 2 years now, there's a lot of things I'm noticing in the background that just, they need love. It's been a while and they need love. Having this extra position will allow me to do that instead of fixing Chromebooks or hanging projectors or working on making carts all day for the new line panels. Like, I will spend 2-3 days in a building building carts with my tech because it's a two-man job to hang these TVs, when I could be working on things that need to be done to upgrade us, to get us more compliant with data security. That's a big one. And to fix some of the things on the network that are in place but need to be cleaned up and be more efficient. So that's really the big proposal here, is to get me less into hanging TVs and more time working on the back end that needs definitely some love, for sure.
And the second tech would also allow you to have a faster turnaround time for student.
For Chromebooks and regular IT tickets we get, roughly Chromebook wise, we have probably over close to 400 tickets a year, depending on what it is. You know, drop, doesn't charge, keys and stuff like that. And you know, changing a screen will take 15 minutes sometimes. So it adds up really quickly. And then of course just regular tickets, projectors being down, labs needing to be updated, stuff like that. This would help get more out there, quicker turnaround time, and I'd be able to work more on the back end on the networking and the security that we should be doing, honestly.
One thing the graphic organizer I think helps to point out is that, we're steady at one yellow, one of each of the blues. And really that light blue, if you look at it, that's the area that we're targeting, because every other district has a much larger band of the light blue. And we are not it's one thing to look down at Bedford and say, well, how many devices do they have? It's a much larger place. Look at Sunapee right next door to where we stand, or Bow, just up the road. Student population relatively similar, device expectations somewhat similar, and yet you just have that wider light blue band. So the add is the IT tech in that light blue. Questions on that one?
This went to Warren recently, right?
No, that was
The
the
digital
tech
learning
coordinator.
That was the tech coordinator. Got it.
It was the digital learning, so
Before me.
remember everybody the history of this. The district asked for 3 digital learning specialists. We wanted 1 per school. The school board, I believe, cut that to 2 and said, we'll support 2. This board then placed 2 on the warrant. I believe 1 was supported by the budget committee, 1 was not recommended by the budget committee, and the voters supported 1. So we have the 1 digital learning specialist, because frankly, that's the top group, right? So if you took that off, 2 years ago, we were actually functioning with just these 3 positions. So, but really the need is in this light blue area, especially with the number of devices. And it's not lost on me that, how many times have you gotten an email that the phones are down? And in the old days, that was the phone company's problem. In the current days, that's Chris's problem. Because it's now, an in-house internet-based VoIP system, and he's got to respond to the phones being down. Camera systems, security expectations. Chris is running around, running wire, and trying to get those cameras up and going. All these things are just add-ons to the IT department, and so it concerns me, especially with all the cybersecurity stuff, that we need to make sure that we're paying attention to where we need to be and not running so thin that we have a mistake. All right. Anything else for Chris? So now I'm going to scroll a little bit further down the spreadsheet because we have 2 reduction lines to talk about. Holly mentioned them, but
That you will see in the budget in front of you a reduction in special education at Campbell High School, again, because we're looking to move that position to the middle school, elementary, sorry, getting late.
Finally got it.
And a reduction of a math teacher at Campbell High School.
in terms of the core programming at Campbell, we currently have 4 teachers in English, 4 social studies. We'd like to have 4 in science. But we have 5 in the math area, so we do have that 1 additional position. There's been a ton of internal debate and dialogue about, to get our math scores up, how do we combat that the best way that we can? but we're also being sensitive to the declining enrollment and the fact that there is that additional position in that department. So the current request, or what we built in the budget, is that reduction. And then the last thing is that there were several positions that were talked about that we want to bring to the board's attention. They are not in the budget currently. However, we want to spend time on this. The first one is the special ed assistant director. That position was also asked for in the warrant several years ago, and the voters did not support that, I think several years in a row, if I remember correctly. But we have a special ed budget that is up dramatically. Our special ed needs have increased dramatically. You have heard from our former special ed director that the job is unmanageable, that the expectations that are being placed on the director have increased and become more complex. Sophia is spending time doing things that a special ed director for a district doesn't normally do. She's in classrooms, working with kids, collecting data, doing things that take her away from other tasks. And so our feeling is that we have to talk again about the special ed assistant director. I think the board's heard, I think you're aware of it. The fact that the board has supported this in the past, I think told a lot of the story. But we are at a point where we really have to examine how we provide oversight within that department. And so to not mention it, to not say it, would be a mistake. And so I've teed it up. Sophia, is there anything else you want to add about this? Because to be honest, Sophia wasn't in the room when we all decided we needed to do this. So she comes in and we're like, surprise, we're talking about it because you need some help. And so we just surprised you.
Yeah, surprise. I think it's really important to note that the complexity of the students coming through, I say coming through, but being presented are getting, I'm not going to say worse, but more head scratching. There are students that are coming through with very rare and I've never heard of that, or how do I address that concerns. I think that behavior, as we all know, with MTSSB and with the emotional behavioral disorders and things coming through, those students take time. And those students take a lot of observational time, as well as a lot of thinking time and a lot of collaborative time. People such as our special educators that have been here for years, or even new special educators, didn't go through courses on how to handle those behaviors. They went through courses on how to teach reading, how to teach math, how to create these relationships so that you can get in with these students and provide that one-to-one. But it's not just the reading and math anymore. The complexities are really skyrocketing. I'm finding that I'm doing a lot more consultation with that, which I spend my day being with the teachers and with the students, and then I come back to my office at 4 o'clock. And that's when I'm starting into the nitty-gritty of what did I miss on my email, who contacted me from another district, or whatever. I'm even trying to pivot to collaborate with other school districts on, you got a bus going here, maybe I can team up with you and we can split the cost. To even try to do that money-saving aspect of things takes time. I can't do it after 4 o'clock, so then I have to carve it out from somewhere else. Truancy is another piece that takes a lot of time, although there's a lot that's been handed to our counselors and at the school level. But once things start ratcheting up and you start involving court, like you show up at 8:30 in the morning and you just wait to be called. So it's not like I can leave. So when you're doing those things, again, it takes an inordinate amount of time. I'm lucky in that I haven't had to do any sort of foster children this year, going to court cases for that, but those are situations where additionally you have to show up for those. So all of that stuff, when it's all combined together, is more than this one. You talk about the ELs that we were just discussing, and my learning curve is 90 degrees straight up with that, and I'm willing to embrace it. But again, that takes time for somebody to teach me and for me to come on board and be able to do. It's more than one person.
Questions about that position?
No, I absolutely, I mean, we have presented it to the voters before, they have denied it. I think that, the need has always been there, and it's still there, and it seems to be growing exponentially. So I fully support giving you some support so that we can continue to have the oversight that we need in that department, so that we can meet all of our students' needs and make sure that we're not putting ourselves at any risk for potential lawsuits or civil rights cases.
I just remind the board to reflect on the communication you've had from parents. Our parents have high expectations of what we deliver in the special ed area.
Absolutely.
And you've heard directly from them. But to expect one human to balance all of that is unreasonable. And it's time that we embrace creating a structure that allows for success of both our employees who are stressed and overwhelmed, but also our students who are the ones who need to benefit from this.
And Sophia's position isn't special ed director, it's student services, so it's not just dealing with special education. She does the case management for out-of-district students for special education, but there's, like she said, homeless, truancy, all that other stuff too. It's not just special ed. And I think before, when we put the warrant article forward, it was, I thought we did special ed coordinator, maybe.
All right, I'm gonna move on if you're ready. So the next position is the instructional coach, and I'm gonna let the principals talk about this. It's listed as a district-wide position because this would be one position that would work in all 3 schools.
So I'll start with this one. This is one that we, as a team, mini Jake over there, chime in anytime you want. And Dan and I have had several conversations about where we are for test scores, where we are for our performance, and what can we do, speaking of people that are strapped to the nth degree, to make sure we're getting all the things done as we are. How do people get better at something? How do we get better at sports? How do we get better at learning? How do we get better at teaching? It involves coaching. So we're proposing to incorporate a K-12 instructional coach to improve our instructional practices across grade levels in all content areas. And this proposal kind of highlights a lot of those details. Jake, you want to chime in?
Well, you did a great job. So nice. I think that.
I think we need a mic there.
Hold on, hang on a second, Jake. You got quiet.
I think it was better on the table, actually, to hear him.
Go for it.
Jen has experience working with instructional coaches from her time in Hudson. We developed a position my time at the regional and really saw some great increases in student achievement. But I think this is also one of those rare occasions where, 2 birds, 1 stone. We're going to see increases in student achievement, but we're also going to see supports for our educators as well. So this is really something that is impacting both of our, within the building, our main stakeholders, our teachers and our kids, just providing supports for our teachers to become better teachers and to give better instruction to kids. And I think that's really a great opportunity we have.
Can you go into a little more detail about what that person actually is doing on a week-to-week basis? One of you, doesn't matter.
Yeah. I'll speak to it because I actually not only worked with them in Hudson, but I was one in Nashua prior to entering into the administration world. I was an instructional technology teacher coach for the entire district, K-8 in Nashua, which was 12 elementary schools, 3 middle schools. What a teacher coach does that's different than what we do is it's non-evaluative. So if I'm going into a classroom, I'm going in purely as a support. I'm going in, the teacher might say, man, I'm having a really hard time with getting kids to answer questions. I'm asking these questions and it's like crickets on the audience. It's crickets out there. How do I help? How do I get kids engaged in asking Socratic questions and getting those answers that are needed? And that coach can come in and do that I do, we do, you do modeling. Kind of come in and say, hey, this is something you're talking about, you're reaching out and saying you're having trouble with. Let me come in and I'll show you a lesson. And how to get that Socratic method off the ground in your classroom. And then we'll do it together, and we'll work together on getting a couple lessons off the ground. And then you'll call me back in when you have a chance to practice it on your own. And it's purely non-evaluative. So it's, if we're going in, we're not saying we're wagging a finger, because we're also trying to coach, but it's really hard when you're also the evaluator to have that opportunity to coach up and to improve. So it's about looking at that curriculum, looking at that content across the board, and helping to support teachers in using best practices, which we know everybody is doing. We're not saying our teachers are not trying hard, because believe us, we all would agree to say every teacher we have is working hard. We just want them to be able to work easier by providing the support to improve, because we can all improve. I could use a coach as an administrator too, but we didn't have the budget. But I think providing that to the teachers is going to take some of that weight off of while they're thinking about how do I get better. Right now we're talking about test scores regularly, talking about that data. What does it look like? How can we help them to get better? Provide that coaching as we would for an athlete. If you're sitting there and you want to get better at lacrosse, you want to get better at basketball, you have a coach that's going to go, hey, if you tip your elbow underneath the ball when you're shooting the hoops, you're gonna get a better shot, you're gonna aim better. This is about teaching them to how to aim better.
So this is done on a one-on-one basis?
Yep.
And like, at what point is this is this done during like planning to, like, when do
As
they?
well as grade levels too, so obviously they could play a role when the grade levels or groups get into PLCs, they can offer best practice research or, different angles to go about. So for instance, at the elementary level, if they looked at the iReady data and said that, they wanted to target phonemic awareness. Like that instructional coach can go in there and have researched the best approaches to phonemic awareness. They can also guide the discussion. So for instance, those higher level out of PLC discussions where you may have a grade level looking at all of their data. And the high level, high vulnerability, but high outcome conversations are the ones that said like, you did amazing, I didn't. Can you tell me what you did differently? An instructional coach can come in and kind of facilitate those conversations with those. I think a little less threatening than if I try to have those conversations, because no matter how I say it, they're going to hear you fail in phonemic awareness, get better.
So like how do you facilitate that in a school day though? I guess that's my question.
So PLCs are built into the schedule. So if you ever wanted, I could show you when. So at least at the elementary level, the way the teacher's contract is written, they have so much time for planning, and then out of that, so many minutes per week has to be set aside for collaborative team time, and in the collaborative team model, then they have their formal PLC meeting. So it's all built into the schedule. So like if you come in my office, I can show you on the wall when grade 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, have that time throughout the week.
What was the cost on that?
So we have it budgeted as at a salary of $80,000. It's 186 work days. We would anticipate paying 10 extra days to work in summer, like some new teacher orientation, that sort of thing. Also collaborating with the digital learning specialists who have some time built in. I think 80 is like top step, because again, you're looking for somebody who's really achieved a level of mastery in the profession. So you're not going to pick somebody up at 42. You're going to have to spend higher in order to get somebody in there.
It's not I'm not putting this down in any way. I think that coaching's a great thing. It's not a functional option to do like any sort of outside, like it probably is it not as cost effective to do outside? So like sales organizations will bring in
An educational consultant would eat up that.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
15 days.
We've done a few, and we burn through money,
Yeah.
and the cost per outcome is.
So it would be teachers that would be seeking. You wouldn't be saying you are doing this coaching. It would be teachers that would be actively seeking the coaching.
What we would see is definitely there's both in that process, but I think thinking about all the new teachers that we're bringing in to Litchfield, how can we better support those new teachers? Offer that coaching, because they may have been a teacher in another district, they may be brand new to teaching, and it's that opportunity to teach them the best Litchfield way we possibly can. We have a mentoring program that's vigorous and strong, and there's lots of them, but it's really targeting those specific skills that we're focusing on to help improve student data and improve student information and student outcomes.
And it would not be an evaluative or a punitive type,
Position.
position,
Yeah.
or
Required
rule,
teacher,
challenge,
yeah.
So my last question on this then is,
Can I answer it a little bit further on that?
Yeah.
So I think any teacher, every teacher should be wanting to improve. And every teacher should understand that, you know, you can improve a lot by yourself, but you can definitely improve a lot more with somebody else. I taught for 7 years. I love teaching, and it's great, and I wanted to improve every year. So if you ask, like, is it for a certain amount of teachers? Really, at the end of the day, it should be for all
Everybody.
teachers.
well, I guess that's my question though,
That's
is like,
the
how
teacher-
is,
That's the teachers that we want.
do the
ones
teachers feel that
want
way
to-
though, I guess is my question. I don't know, I'm not a
So,
teacher.
You know, one other piece that kind of contribute to it, and the principals will tell you, I've been pretty hard at poking at them about exactly how this position fit and what it would do. But one of the things they convinced me and reminded me of is that 20 years ago, we advertised for a teacher, and we had 15 people who were graduates of a teacher prep program who applied, and they'd already done a student teaching experience. They came in with a qualification.
Yeah.
Currently, we have the highest number of alternative plan teachers that I've seen in Litchfield, and that is really the trend. The level of support that is required of somebody who hasn't completed a traditional teacher prep program, who hasn't done the student teaching, really has heightened the need to have somebody who can help provide that coaching and on-the-job training. So we're willing to, it's not even willing, we have to accept alternative plan candidates in order to staff our classroom. We have an obligation to coach those people and support them and to make sure that they achieve the level of mastery that's necessary. So I think that's a whole other dimension to this that we have to talk, and it's not, you know, I'm not saying that to say somebody's lesser qualified, it's just the reality of the pool that we have. And once we make that commitment to somebody, I think we have an obligation to support them in this position that we think is critical.
So I think, if I can jump in, look, one of the questions I have is that, to me, this is a newer sounding position. It's something that I hadn't heard of before. Something that would be helpful for me would be to know how many districts employ these positions, how many across their districts are there in our peer cohort, how many have this type of position in there, and what does that look like? And again, I'm not saying you need the data tonight, but that would be helpful for me.
No, my only other follow-up question was,
And-
I would,
and just driving to Hudson, so the big signboard in front of the SAU office is instructional coaches needed. And so they're like advertising and seeking those positions.
are these hard to find?
You see this more and more. I don't think they're hard to find if we do with proper notice.
I think
I saw
good
that
ones are
sign in
hard to find.
October, so
You think what, Mary?
I think good ones are hard to find.
Yeah, yeah.
So my only other follow-up question on that then was, I would assume this person, if this is as beneficial as it sounds, I would assume this person would be busy all the time. If they were not busy, are there, you know, we have special education directors that are in classrooms with kids right now because we don't have, is there more that they could pick up
So
from
if you-
some of their,
If you look at the job description, can you click back on that?
We made it overly encompassing.
It has a lot of other things built into it just in case. So it's a data analyst, it's sitting and taking a look at deep
Okay.
dives into the information. It's somebody who's looking at curriculum and making sure that the curriculum
And somebody
vertically
is working very closely with me as well to make sure that curriculum alignment is happening, that the instructional practices that they're seeing is aligning with what our curriculum expectations are.
Like, for instance, I can tell you as a principal, you weren't there in the summer, but like the data presentation that I did, I was able to do that because I had the luxury of the summer to be able to do that. I can't do that during the school year, so this would be something that I could give to this person and be like, will you look at the iReady data and inform me as to what we need to do?
Yeah.
And then they could be a person that could actually do a little dive on that and then guide where we need to go.
because we do get that data 3 times a year, so that allows us to be really having that time to have somebody who's looking into that data, informing us, but also informing our teachers on where to go with it, because we get a lot of information, and teachers are extremely busy with planning lessons, grading, communicating with families. How can we help lighten their load a little bit by providing them with the support?
Let's get that information. Now my wife starts to have objections.
My, I guess my overarching concern about this is that, you know, an instructional coach for a K-12 district, all subject areas, is extremely broad. is it possible to find someone who is able to coach at the elementary and the middle and the high school in all subject areas? Or is this typically a position that is a little bit more narrow in scope?
So I've seen, in my practice, I've seen it done both ways. In Nashua, where I started teaching, we had a math coach, a language arts coach, a humanities coach, a STEM coach, and a tech coach. And they traveled to all schools.
Yeah.
But they were
I think that's the format I'm more familiar with.
In Hudson, they are also more specialized. But where this was a new ask, we're asking to test it out to see if it works for us. And I think you can find a teacher who's well versed in the practices that make learning fun and important for students. And I think that we're looking for a master teacher. We're if you're a master teacher at any grade level, you're able to convert.
For subject matter.
We're not looking for a curriculum specialist, we're looking for
You're looking for an
Yeah.
instructional
Yeah,
specialist.
it's different,
and
right.
Specialist.
Okay, that makes sense.
Thank you.
So for me, when I looked at the position, I kind of thought big picture. Like if we were Ford or GM, we'd be investing in research and development or engineering. We are in the business of learning. We see that 76% of the taxpayers' dollars go towards personnel. And of that, the majority of those are teachers. And those are the ones that, you know, along with our paraprofessionals are in the classrooms as well as our OTs and PTs. But each classroom has a teacher in it. So for us, it's investing in those teachers to make sure that they're growing and they're able to meet their capability, which then goes with their job satisfaction and then results in further learning as well. So if we're gonna spend 76% of a $25 million budget on personnel, which schools do, let's invest in that. Let's make sure that those teachers are meeting where they want to be, and where we want them to be.
So in sum, Holly, make sure I have this right, the total personnel changes, so we're taking the ads that were included in the budget up above, there was a subtotal for that line. You then have the deductions from the high school, and then you have these two positions also added in. So, you know, if you were to do everything that was on this sheet, you're looking at a total of $627,642. And again, our purpose tonight is to come forward and to articulate and explain and provide backstory as to what we're asking for. And I know this is new to you, you need time to think about it. We'll be happy to take questions. Tuesday, Wednesday, following Wednesday, we're good.
And you guys are doing a really good job outlining the backstory for it, so you definitely are advising us what the need is. I think it's just balancing the entire picture. And we're still missing half of it, we'll get the other half on Tuesday, but how do we balance it all at the same time?
As I introduced and to kind of go to Mike's point, you know, you talked about it being kind of unfiltered, and we realized as we're talking in the room, if we had filtered anything, that's where the conversation ended. And so no one else could have any consideration in it because we were the ones that had to kind of sit here and tell the story. And so that was our purpose to come here tonight, is to present those, but also to tell the story, the backstory and the needs, so that you can consider everything out there and everything as an option, need and coupled with and balanced with the fiscal responsibility that you have, as well as the taxpayers and the residents of the town. We just wanted to make sure that everything was out there so that we could have a fully informed discussion.
A concern with unfiltered is it's easy. So let's make sure that you get the clarity to the backstory.
I think it's been pretty clear. I think you've outlined, you've done a really good job with outlining it, with budgeting for it, with explaining the need behind each and every piece of it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think if you don't do it this way, you're looking every year at 1 year, and you're not looking at what is the big picture. We may not be able to achieve all of these things in 1 year, but you know, if we're looking for, we can pick things off and look at them in the context of the other things and figure out, you know, looking
what's right
forward.
for this year and what's right for next
So
year.
I like the way that you guys did this. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So this is the end of the personnel piece, so I don't know if you want to open.
Well, so here's,
And then there's
I'm
one other
also
quick
cognizant
budget.
of time, because we did put a end time of 9:30, and, Obviously, we have multiple meetings, so what I wanna do, rather than, this one is 45 pages. Rather than do the page by page, I guess I'm gonna ask, I'm gonna.
Come on.
I am. I am gonna literally start with
He was
Peter.
waiting so patiently.
No, I'm not starting with Andrew though. I'm gonna start with Peter. Do you have any questions on pages 1 through 45 of the personnel budget that have not been answered yet?
Not that I can recall.
Okay. Andrew, hit us up. Let's go.
Well, I mean, a lot of this was addressed in conversation, so I thank you for the detailed explanation. So I think on pages 1 through 43, I'm good. On page 44, we're gonna talk about the raises and the bonus, right? Because the bonus pool, 2%, is new to the budget this year, from what I can tell.
Yes, that's correct.
So, talk to me about that.
So, I believe there's been conversations with the board prior and the superintendent about possible bonuses. So we thought we could put that into the budget. It would be a pool for the superintendent to divvy up amongst the non-union staff. If that's something the board's not looking to do, we'd be happy to take 5% raises in the raise pool and get rid of the bonus pool as well.
Good negotiation.
I need to keep staff here. We do not have many staff.
Well, Mike, you're all Polly. All right.
Administrators, with the bonus pool, I mean, the bonus pool would be something nice to do for people. With the cost of living the past couple of years, yeah, maybe it's going back down, so they say. I don't really see it when I go to the grocery store, but administrators usually are at 3%. We need to do something to keep people. We can't lose people. I think it would be something nice to do, but again, we're willing to negotiate.
Other questions, Andrew? I think she just totally mic dropped you at this point. You're welcome.
No, man, look, I mean,
Just something, yeah.
No, I think it's a good conversation piece,
It's-
right?
Absolutely. I think it's certainly a nice to have. I know we've talked about it a little bit. To see it in the budget was a bit off guard for me, but nevertheless, I appreciate the background.
I mean, another thing with a bonus is that it's not year to year. So when you look at
Yes,
inflation
that you
over
can-
the last couple of years, you know, there's plenty of people that are getting above 5% raises, no matter where they're at. This would be a 3% raise that would carry on to the future years, but the bonus pool would not. So it's a way to kind of get above that 3%, but then also not get above it kind of throughout the rest as we kind of look at the whole budget as well.
Any other questions, Andrew, for this budget?
I think just for board awareness, I did go through the budget in detail, and I did add up the vacant positions.
I have cost spreadsheets.
I don't have some of the benefits behind it, but just the salary lines, because I know some of those positions have benefits. I got 777,000, but recognize it's probably higher than that.
I like your number better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Because my number was definitely higher than
No,
that.
you're including benefits, so.
Yeah, including benefits, I believe we were around 850. I had a spreadsheet that I created calculating all our vacant positions, and the cost for those. Let me send that to you.
Thank you.
But again, those positions are critical, and our staff are not doing well mentally and emotionally and physically. All of our staff, our teachers, our support staff, like, we have a bigger conversation at a later time that we need to have to get some of those filled, but I will absolutely
It
send
plays
you
into the
data.
bonus conversation, quite frankly.
What?
It plays into the bonus
Yeah.
conversation.
Right.
Which is why I brought it up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the number of shortages in the district is no surprise. We've been highlighting it now for
Exactly.
a long time.
Right.
Right, and we're asking less people to do more.
Yep,
So,
yep, absolutely.
A lot
I'll
more.
send you that, spreadsheet, cause I listed the vacant positions in it and the cost associated with each position.
For this current year.
Yeah, I did it based off of what would be in this budget that you're
Okay.
looking at, but I
Okay.
also have this current year as well.
Okay.
I can send you both of those.
Thank you.
Holly's hinting at, and I'm gonna be more direct, we had a meeting today with an employee group, that people are at their breaking point. They are literally, it's November 2nd and they are June hired. It is really just listening to the stories, and I just sat there saying, I had no idea. It's pretty remarkable. And, if we don't come up with something to be in response to what we're hearing, we're just gonna continue to chew through people. You're gonna continue to have massive turnover.
At our next board meeting, could you summarize that for the board and non-public?
Yeah, I can get into way more detail than you in non-public.
Thank you.
But in public, I wanna say out loud that people are overwhelmed. And I've never, and what's interesting, in listening to our employees, the number of times people say, I've never seen anything like this, I've never dealt with behavior like this, I've never seen reactions like this. We're talking seasoned vets who are being hit with things that they don't know how to deal with. So it ties back to coaching, it ties back to retention, and it ties back to we're not in a good spot.
And depressing.
Yeah.
And we have the HR budget.
Well, I'm gonna finish. Matt, do you have any?
Holly's gonna get it tonight.
Oh, she is.
I'm
Oh,
gonna rebuttal on Holly.
I'm not cutting her off. I'm making sure no other questions on salaries and benefits.
Oh, no,
Are you okay?
I asked plenty of questions.
Okay. Tina,
thank you.
you're good? I'm all set too. And so Ness, now we can move on
Well, does
to.
the budget
Oh,
committee
I'm
have
sorry.
questions?
Yeah, Brian's got his hand up. Sorry. Yep.
HR budget's 2
I just
pages.
find it odd in this budget,
Yeah, no.
it's probably just a typo, but Andrew, informed the budget committee at our last meeting that we would not be seeing names in here as far as teachers and, which is fantastic. But what's odd is that there are 2 names listed in this budget, and one of them happens to be in.
Yeah.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah, sorry, that's my fault.
That's all right. They were labeled differently, yeah.
Cause they're notes, sorry,
It's all good.
we will fix those for
There
you.
isn't?
So,
You don't get any privacy.
It's
you're
under-
100% right, and that's because when we pulled the positions,
Yeah.
Cat's out of the bag.
yeah.
I do this for the money.
Yeah, it's under school board because it was
Yeah.
added in as a note and I wrote the names in, and then we pulled a report and pulled the names out. I'll take you guys' amazing salary then. Put 'em person A and B.
Sure.
Thanks, Brian.
Any other questions, budget committee?
Yes, I have a few, sorry.
Yep.
And some of these may just be clarifications.
Yep.
So, originally, I think Doug talked about the attrition and made the comment that the school board had already removed 150K.
Last year.
Last year,
Well, for this current year,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
for next year.
not the budget you're looking at.
Thank you. That's one question. The ELL position, we currently have in this year a .7 position, correct?
Yes.
Is the move to a full-time 1.0 an increase of .3? Okay, so the FTE increase is .3, not 1.0.
Correct.
And JD, to clarify, because when you look at the dollars associated with the .3, you cross a bunch of thresholds. You become benefit eligible.
Correct,
So
yep.
then you have to factor that in. You become, that includes retirement. So you have to factor that in. So it really, I think it's like 56,000 is the amount that's associated with it. And that's, seems like a lot of money for 23, but again, it's because of crossing that threshold to get those other benefits.
2 more. Holly's spreadsheet that she had up earlier showed the total personnel change increase of $627,642. Does that include the positions that are also not listed in the budget, like this assistant sped director?
Yeah, so
Yes.
I, I
Yeah.
clicked on that cell and it's the sum of, see, it includes that
So-
268, so.
That's if we went with everything that was there. So Mike, if you go up a little bit on that spreadsheet, what's the actual positions that you see added into this salary and benefits budget? Go down a little
549.
more.
Is
Is that
Yeah.
359? Yeah.
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 350, oh, because you're taking out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you have the 549 in additional positions, and then the reductions is the net change of the 359 for in the current budget you have in front of you.
So you have the additional IT person in the budget?
No.
No.
Let's-
Yes.
Oh, in the
Yes.
budget, yes.
That position we have currently. The two at the bottom.
Instructional
we don't.
coach.
So you have the 549 here, which reflects all of those positions
Yes.
up top.
Yep.
Wait,
We then are deducting out the 190, which are the two reductions,
Yeah,
to get 359, which is what's in the budget,
correct.
right?
So,
And then if we decide to do the other two positions, we're gonna add 268,
That's the 6 one.
getting us
Correct,
to the
yeah.
620.
So what's total, what's current in the budget is 359.
Correct.
so I just need a clarification on that then.
Mhm.
The IT specialist you say we already have, so why isn't there an addition?
We're looking for another IT
Alright,
tech.
so in the budget is an additional one.
Correct,
That's not been on the warrant, that's not been approved by the voters.
correct.
And, yeah, and that was my last comment, was it does look like I get to the logic of if you're reducing special ed at the high school, and it almost sounds like that's shifting to GMS. I guess my comment, because I know this will come up in 2 weeks, is conversation around the other additional positions, and I don't consider the stipend positions of lacrosse,
Well, it'll be discussed just because it's a program change in town.
but the other ones, the IT technician, the ELL, the special ed director, the other ones, if they make it in, those being warrant articles versus being in the budget.
So the way we saw it, and that's why the two are at the the very two at the bottom are new positions that we don't currently have in the district that we would, us administrators would be looking for approval by the board to put warrant articles on.
Okay.
It's not the time for that
Yeah.
discussion now.
I just,
Like-
it will come up.
Comment.
Absolutely,
There will
yeah.
be- there will
Yep,
be-
but
It'll
that's,
come up
so
at this
that's how
table,
it's
for
broken
the
out in
record.
the spreadsheet.
Huh?
It'll come up at this table
Well, I
for
just-
the record.
If it doesn't come up there and doesn't pass there, it will come up again in the budget committee.
I hope that gives clarity as to why things are parsed.
Yeah, that's why they were parsed
We
out.
have an IT technician with the additional IT technician, so the position exists, we put it in the budget. Instructional coach, we don't have one, that would be new, we recognize the warrant conversation.
Other questions from the budget committee?
That's it for me.
Not very.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to human resources.
In 3 minutes, Holly, you're.
All right, I got it. So, normally you don't see any increases in this budget, but this year, however, you see an increase of 18,577, but that's because Doug and I wanted to clean up his budget, so you saw a decrease in his.
Thank you.
All right? So he was giving it, he's giving it all to me, basically. No, we put a lot of software for, like, HR Business Office works very close together. But our HR office, I oversee, applications, I oversee payroll, so we're taking those software pieces that are in the business budget and moving them to the human resources budget. We feel like that's the best place for them to go. So our applicant software, Time Clock Plus is our, clock-in software, our hourly staff clock in and out on. The interface for that is, we have an interface to our payroll system, and then Ed Jobs. Our previous, when we had two positions, one that was SAU admin assistant and one that was school board admin assistant, and then executive assistant to the superintendent, we had those two positions, they handled different things. Ed Jobs is advertising for teaching jobs in New Hampshire. We're moving that from the SAU budget into mine, so that's why you see those increases, you'll see decreases in the business budget. I did put an increase in advertising with our lack of staff. Posting on my website, posting our website's wonderful, it goes to School Spring. If I'm a custodian, I have no idea what School Spring is, I'm not looking at School Spring, I'm looking at Indeed or any of those sites. Those sites cost $1,500 to post your job on there for 30 days, and that's the lowest, for one of the lower packages. So I thought, at least if I could increase it maybe twice a year, we could do it. There's also, actually my dad is starting the Hudson, that's my dad, Hudson paper, so I just advertised in that, that'll be coming out, that's cheaper
Hudson
cost,
Times.
but I need to think of other ways to get these advertisements out, but they cost money, so. Last thing is dues for New Hampshire School Administrators Association. That is one that I'm not part of, but they have wonderful workshops. Most of our administrators are part of that, so I've added that into the HR budget. So that's where you see increases in.
On the time clock plus,
Yeah.
I went back in past years and it looks like the two lines for time clock plus, even though it's a transfer, I acknowledge that, it's up $1,200.
We went
We
off
went
the
up-
actual, off the fiscal 23 actual, so we pulled it from there.
And
when
we
actually
added, didn't we add 3% to it because we
Yeah.
figured we were gonna get a nice increases from them.
Other questions from the board? Hearing none. Questions from the budget committee?
I know the NHSAA has a season pass, is that, maybe for Dr. Jettie, is that encompasses like a group of administrators, right?
It doesn't encompass dues, it just encompasses, tickets to
Got it.
professional development activities. We each have to pay our dues and other.
And we purchased two. We actually track that pretty carefully. You guys kind of rotate through and share it, right?
Yeah.
Any other questions from budget committee? Hearing none, we have made it through our first budget session for the night. At 9:30 on the dot. Thank you all for coming. Do we need a motion to adjourn?
So made.
Is it
Second.
second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? 5-0-0. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, Jake.